Welcome to Eastern Romance Tales, where every story is a journey of the heart. Let's dive into today's tale. Volume 5, Chapter 226. Must quickly rush to the imperial city. Hua Cheng said, elder brother. Here you need not worry anymore, they will know how to handle it themselves. The imperial preceptor placed Yes corpse onto the bone fish. It then carried the bone dragon's head, along with Quan Yizhen and Emu, away into the distance. As it swam, it picked up the fallen bone pieces of the bone dragon, piecing them together, gradually healing itself. Indeed, they could handle it themselves. In such dire circumstances, Xie Lian did not say a second word, immediately controlling the divine statue to soar into the sky. The divine officials vied to ask Crown Prince Highness, "Where are you going? You don't mean to chase after him, do you? We barely managed to escape." Xie Lian said it's impossible not to pursue him. He is heading towards a place densely populated with commoners. There's no more time, everyone hold on tight. Hua Cheng held 2 dice in his hand, and in a deep voice asked Gage, "Are you mentally prepared?" Xie Lian nodded. He rolled the dice, shouting loudly, "Shrink 1,000 miles of land, deploy." The divine statue, supplied with sufficient spiritual power, surged directly forward with all its might. Piercing through several layers of clouds, sure enough, they saw the dark horizon suddenly blaze red with the giant's fiery glow. They had also already flown to the imperial city. Suddenly in the sky a giant monster slowly descended, and the people on the ground were frozen in terror. Some shrieked piercingly, while others ran for their lives. Shi Qingxian, seeing this, also felt a chill run down his spine. Yet he immediately regained his composure and yelled hoarsely, "There is nothing to fear. Everyone, don't panic. It will not descend here, someone will stop it. The heavenly deities will help us." "Is that really true, old Feng? That monster is so enormous, one hand could scoop up all of us." Shi Qingxian gave a forced laugh. "It's true. Look, am I not still standing here? If I die, I'll die first. Ha 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 ha." He himself was also so flustered that he was on the verge of losing his wits. Xie Lian, while controlling the divine statue to fly over, swung his arm to seize the giant, desperately pulling it upwards to prevent it from descending to the ground, while simultaneously saying, "Everyone, quickly get down." The divine officials, who had ridden on the divine statue for a long distance, each and every one of them had been scared half to death by Xie Lian, only wishing to quickly get down, and thus hurriedly vied with each other to jump off the statue. Upon seeing Shi Qingxian, they were immediately stunned. "Lord Windmaster? Why are you here? Why have you transformed into this appearance?" Shi Qingxian laughed loudly. "Don't ask any more questions. Quickly come here and connect with the spiritual array to assist us. We cannot let those resentful spirits escape." Most heavenly officials hesitated. Only Lang Tianqiu immediately rushed forward. "Let me help you." Once someone stepped forward, the other heavenly officials joined one by one. The array of living beings grew much stronger and more stable. Xie Lian continued to pull the giant higher. Just as he breathed a sigh of relief, he heard a great bang from below. The giant had split once more. One of its legs detached from its body, hurtling down towards the ground. A single leg would be enough to crush a vast expanse of land. Not only the array of living beings, but even the entire imperial city might be flattened beneath its weight. To everyone's surprise, the leg had barely traveled halfway when it suddenly shattered into countless pieces, bursting apart in midair. Against the pitch-black sky, tens of thousands of stone fragments, still ablaze with firelight, dotted the expanse, falling like rain without any destructive power, resembling nothing so much as a magnificent fireworks display. Xie Lian wondered in surprise, did it self-detonate? Suddenly, a figure shot out from the fireworks, alighting upon the giant's body. Xie Lian observed intently, then exclaimed joyfully, "General Pei, are you still well? That is truly wonderful." Indeed, in his heart, he had always been concerned for Pei Ming and the others. Pei Ming, one hand clutching his sword, the other sweeping back his hair, his dashing demeanor utterly undiminished, replied a few things occurred, but nothing truly serious. First scorched by fire, then boiled, yet still unharmed. The Ife of a martial god was indeed remarkably tenacious. Xie Lian asked, "Where are Banyu and everyone else?" Hua Cheng interjected, "They are fine. Gage, look, they are over there." Xie Lian turned his head, and indeed saw Banyu supporting Pei Su in the far distance, standing on a rooftop. It appeared that earlier Mingguang Palace had been completely sealed, preventing the boiling seawater from seeping inside, which was why everyone was unharmed. Xie Lian then asked, "What about Xianji?" A smug voice rang out naturally, "I defeated her." The voice emanated from Pei Ming's hand. Only then did Xie Lian realize that the sword clutched in Pei Ming's grasp was none other than Mingguang. He exclaimed in alarm, "General Pei, why are you holding the Mingguang sword?" Pei Ming replied, "This is rather complicated." Rongguang chuckled smugly, "Ha ha ha ha, what's complicated about it? Didn't you kneel down and apologize to me, admit your mistake, and then beg for my forgiveness? Ha 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 ha, satisfied, utterly satisfied." Xie Lian vaguely surmised the entire situation. At that time the three demons had not yet killed Pei Ming. Instead, they were preoccupied with vying to see who truly deserved the kill, and promptly plunged into battle. Rongguang emerged victorious, sending both Xianji and Kuo flying. Just then, rumbling explosions began to sound outside, and the entire Golden Palace at times soared skyward, at times plummeted earthward. The predicament was perilous, yet there was no means of escape, so they could only defend within the palace. He would never forget how Pei Ming had humbled himself to comply with his desires, admitting his mistake and begging for his help, a fact that truly filled him with immense gratification. The giant had lost a leg, yet it leisurely, unhurriedly, as if nothing had happened, gradually recovered. The massive rocks and the golden palaces slowly sealed the missing section. In but an instant it had fully regenerated, returning to its original form, though perhaps slightly diminished in size. Bui Ming held tightly to the Mingguang sword, rushing straight towards Shunwu Palace. Xie Lian called out loudly, "General Bui, be careful." With the Mingguang sword in hand, Bui Ming's attacking power suddenly increased sharply. Although Rongguang was incompetent, lived dissolutely, and committed many wrongdoings, he was indeed worthy of being Bui Ming's partner. For so many years the two understood very well how to coordinate with each other. Quan Yizhen had not yet managed to get close to Shunwu Palace before being punched several times, while Bui Ming, despite encountering more obstacles, advanced further, directly rushing towards the gates of Shunwu Palace. From within the Mingguang sword, Rongguang called out, "Don't you see? I told you long ago, the two of us combined are truly invincible under heaven. Nothing can stop us. If you had listened to me sooner, you wouldn't be a mere General Mingguang anymore." Veins on Bui Ming. NG's forehead bulged. "Can you stop talking?" Shi Rong stood at the entrance of Shunwu Palace, yelling, "You owner-killing horse, I advise you, don't charge in here looking for death. The Mingguang sword slashed down once, you green thing. What do you know to speak of? Don't block the way." Shi Rong was almost cut in half by this sword, spinning several times, only managing to stand steady thanks to Guzi holding his leg. He asked worriedly, "Father, are you all right?" Shi Rong was humiliated in front of Guzi, seething with anger, yet seeing Bui Ming's murderous aura, he dared not charge forward to fight hand to hand, only daring to be bold with words, using such despicable tricks again. Who would have thought? Guzi said nothing, but instead fell thud onto the ground. He lowered his head, saw Guzi wasn't moving, then grabbed his collar, shaking him back and forth, glaring and shouting, "You foolish child, what are you doing?" Guzi looked as if he was in a deep sleep, his eyes tightly closed, his forehead hot like burning fire. Xie Lian, struggling desperately with the giant, suddenly noticed over there, and hurriedly said, "Shi Rong, why don't you run away quickly? That place was just burned by fire, it flew high and plunged into the sea. That child is still too small, he will die." Shi Rong tilted his head back, and yelled, "You don't need to teach me. Who are you trying to scare? This boy was raised by me, he won't die so easily. Don't think I don't know, you are simply trying to deceive him. As soon as I leave this place, you will use every trick to take my life." Even if Xie Lian didn't touch him, there was still Lang Qianqiu always waiting to tear him apart. On the other side, Bui Ming and Jun Wu had already begun to fight. Shi Rong was burned by the battle fire right to his feet, crying out, jumping back and forth to dodge. Xie Lian angrily shouted, "Even a ghost like you cannot endure this fire. How dare you expect a child to endure it?" Guzi was clamped under Shi Rong's armpit, his face flushed red. Shi Rong again spoke boldly, "Jun Wu, old boss. Can you please not burn such a big fire? You're burning even grand me now." Xie Lian felt that he actually intended to say, Jun Wu old thief, you're even burning your grandfather now. But to preserve his life, he dared not speak it out. Jun Wu would never bother to pay attention to him, still busy fighting Bui Ming, his face smiling truly eerily. The flames around Shi Rong grew larger and larger, leaving no place where he could set foot. Although he was a ghost, even if he were burned further he wouldn't die, but he still felt pain and needed rest to recover. A moment later Gu Zi, who was clamped under his armpit, also cried out miserably, seemingly burned. Shi Rong lifted him up, and indeed saw his forehead profusely bleeding, his shoulder burned in a large patch. Gu Zi woke up, not understanding what was happening, hugging Shi Rong and crying loudly, Father, it hurts so much. I'm so scared. Shi Rong's forehead broke out in cold sweat, the corner of his mouth twitched, unsure what to say. Gu Zi brought his hand to cover the wound, tears and snot streaming down. Father, are we going to be burned to death here? Tik Dung hesitated. This. Cock-2 dazedly said, although your territory is very beautiful, it's not very good either. Everyone here doesn't treat us very well either. Or why don't we move to another place to live? Tik Dung could no longer restrain himself. He rushed into the hall, intending to go up and grab Quan No, but did not dare to get close, standing far away and shouting loudly, Boss, boss, you fight if you want to fight, but what are you doing burning fires? After all, this place is your territory, how can you just burn it so casually, ha ha ha. Ta Lin saw his foolish action, jumped down from the top of the divine statue's head, and angrily yelled, Don't seek death. Get out of there, I guarantee I won't touch you. Tik Dung refused to listen to him. Seeing Quan No indifferent, not paying him any mind, while Cock-2 was crying loudly, Tik Dung felt his self-esteem being trampled, and rushed forward cursing, Where did you get such a big fire to burn? Didn't I tell you not to burn anymore, didn't you hear me? Ta Lin Tik Dung. He had not even gotten close, when Quan No already waved his hand, and a flame surrounded, engulfing his entire body. Tik Dung screamed most piteously. Ta Lin panicked. Cock-2. Such a big fire, if Tik Dung wasn't and to the bone, he would at least be burned to the point of injuring his vital energy. As for Cock-2, wouldn't he directly turn into ash? Bui Min also saw the child tucked under Tik Dung's armpit, intending to run to rescue him, but Quan No was still holding the advantage, and Bui Min was worried about his own safety. Where would he get the time to save anyone? He said, Your Majesty, the child is only a few years old, not deserving to be tormented like this. However, both Bui Min and Ta Lin knew that in Quan No's eyes, whether the child was young or not was no longer important. In his eyes now there was only the enemy blocking his path. Quan No then unleashed a palm strike, and a raging flame threw Bui Min flying out. The divine official below cried out in horror, General Bui has been burned. Just then, a heavy downpour poured down. Although it could not extinguish the giant's battle fire, it did extinguish the fire on Bui Min's body. Among the crowd, a black-clad figure jumped up into midair and caught Bui Min. Ta Lin shouted loudly, Master of Rain, Your Excellency. Vu Su, riding on a black ox, looked up at him and nodded slightly. Bui Min, sitting at the back after being burned by fire, was then drenched, soaking wet by the heavy rain pouring down on him, like a chicken falling into a soup pot, his hair disheveled, unbearably messy. After a period of days, he opened his eyes and only then knew he had been caught by Vu Su. Although she was concentrating on riding the ox, it was not convenient for her to turn and look at him. But this utterly unhandsome appearance still completely fell into her eyes. He was slightly embarrassed, stood up and said, Vu? Who would have thought? As soon as he spoke, a cloud of black smoke immediately spewed from his mouth. Deng Quang was so infuriated he went crazy. To again let a woman come to save you, and still the Master of Rain Empress at that. Bui Min, do you feel humiliated or not? Bui Min was also angry, and while spewing black smoke, yelled, As for you, can you just shut up? On the other side, Bui Tusi and Ban Noyet leisurely flew to Vu Su's place, helping Bui Min. On this side, the giant shook its body, causing tens of thousands and thousands of stones to fall rattling down. These stones were still burning brightly, just like a meteor shower successively plunging down to the ground. It rained increasingly heavily, yet still could not extinguish Quan No's fire. Apparently, he had used spiritual power to strengthen the fire. Moreover, even if the rainwater could extinguish the fire, what then? A stone giant of such size falling to the ground, it was feared that in a blink of an eye, the imperial city would have seen countless massive craters, innumerable deaths. The divine statue was still fiercely pulling at the giant, while Xie Lian could not split himself, nor did he know how many individuals here were martial gods, or if they could block it in a single attempt. Xie Lian anxious turned and said, "San Lang, this?" Hua Cheng, standing behind, placed his hand on the back of his hand. "Gage does not need to worry. You just need to hold on up here. The matters below do not require your interference." His voice echoed in Xie Lian's ears, emitting a truly warm aura. He lightly tilted his chin, signaling Xie Lian to look. He cast his gaze towards the direction Hua Cheng indicated, only to see outside the formation, there was a figure dressed in red, with hands clasped behind his back, slowly walking. Xie Lian narrowed his eyes to observe, suddenly surprised. That was Hua Cheng. Another Hua Cheng? What was happening? Xie Lian hurriedly turned around. Wasn't Hua Cheng standing behind him? Hua Cheng lightly chuckled. "Gage, do not be startled. I am indeed the real San Lang, not deceiving old or young. Absolutely not a fake." So, down there was a Hua Cheng clone created before he left? No wonder Quan No earlier did not suspect at all Hua Cheng sneaking into the heavenly capital. Even Xie Lian found it strange. Could it be that he would not keep a close eye on what was below? Actually, it was not that he was not monitoring, but that he had personally seen Hua Cheng guarding the imperial city, naturally no longer having any doubts. Sure, Qingxian did not have the leisure to look up at the sky, and even if he did look, he could not see Hua Cheng and Xie Lian so high up. As soon as he saw Hua Cheng come to his side, he hurriedly said, "Crimson rain sought flow. You have finally returned. What were you doing that you were gone for so long? Planning with His Royal Highness the Crown Prince?" No, or perhaps you should help me deal with things here first. You must have seen those fiery stones falling from the sky, right? Quickly think of something. Blow a breath, or tell your little butterflies to fly up and smash those stones, otherwise everyone will die. Hua Cheng did not answer a word, just coldly let him babble on and on for a while, finally seemingly unable to bear it any longer, directly interrupted him. "You deal with it yourself." Sure, Qingxian was surprised. "I deal with it myself? At a time like this, and you can still joke? I am not His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. I do not understand your strange pleasures. How can I deal with that pile of stones?" Before his words ended, Hua Cheng had grabbed his collar and dragged him out of the formation. Sure, Qingxian reacted very quickly. As soon as he was out of the formation, he immediately pulled the two people beside him to stand close together, so the formation would not be broken. Who would have known? Hua Cheng not only pushed him out, but also struck a palm, sending his entire body flying outwards. The beggars panicked. "Old Feng." Someone towards Hua Cheng shouted loudly, "Why did you hit him?" Although Sure Qingxian flew outwards, he only tumbled a few times, knelt on the ground and immediately scrambled up. "It's all right. It's all right, I'm not dead yet." He didn't reel. "Why hit me? He was just lending me spiritual power." "Really?" Sure Qingxian looked at his two hands, then looked down at his entire body, from head to toe all radiating spiritual light. "City Lord Hua, if you couldn't find His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, you shouldn't act like this. If you lend spiritual power, lend it properly. I also don't mind eating those strange-tasting candies. There's no need to resort to hitting people. First of all, just look up at the sky. How many more stones are still rushing down?" Suddenly, Hua Cheng swung his right hand, throwing something to him. Sure Qingxian, without thinking, raised his hand to catch it. As soon as he saw that object, his complexion immediately turned pale. That thing, how could it turn out to be the Wind Master's fan? Seeing this, Xie Lian, who was standing on top of the divine statue, also started in surprise. "San Lang, wasn't that Wind Master's fan with? Then who is that person down there?" Hua Tan said, "No need to mind. Just called to lend a hand." Su Tan Huin clutched his incredibly familiar fan in his hand, his neck stiffening, as he slowly turned to gaze at Hua Tan. Hua Tan spoke coldly, "You deal with it yourself." The fiery meteor shower was poised to plunge towards the earth. Those caught in the formation felt as if rocks were about to smash directly into their faces, cold sweat and hot sweat streaming down them. "Lao Fong, are your words truly real? Nothing will truly happen, will it?" The divine Offi. Siles too grew anxious. "Tai Tu Dian Ha, could you please swiftly devise a plan?" Su Tan Huin gripped the fan tightly, veins bulging on the back of his hand, his eyes streaked with a fine web of blood. In that instant, he spun around abruptly, flinging his arm upwards with force. From the flat ground, a sudden tempest erupted, soaring straight towards the heavens. The meteor shower, hurtling downwards, was bent from its trajectory, scattering in another direction. The beggars, terrified out of their wits and seemingly ready to flee en masse, were suddenly battered by this tempest, their hair blown into disarray, gasping in choked silence, utterly frozen in shock. A long moment later, someone spoke tremblingly, "A god, an immortal." Someone suddenly exclaimed, "By the heavens, Lao Fong, could it be you are truly an immortal?" Su Tanhuin gave a flick of his fan, his hands trembling, taking several gasping breaths. Only after a moment did he regain his composure, reluctantly saying, "How absurd. Didn't I tell you all earlier? See, I wasn't boasting at all, was I? Not at all, not at all, not boasting in the least. I believe it. Lao Fong is an immortal and we are friends of an immortal. We've struck it rich now, ha 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 ha. Lao Fong, let's make a deal. When will you take us flying with you, huh?" Seeing this, Hoa Tan let out a soft snort, then turned and departed. Su Tanhuin, on the other side, still holding the Windmaster's fan, was cheerfully answering Count's bewildered questions, his complexion alternating between pale and flushed, cold sweat streaming down. He meant to lift his head to speak, but that person had already vanished. Suddenly, from within the darkness, a strange sound reverberated. Squeak, 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 squeak. Someone narrowed their eyes, saying, "What is that? So overwhelmingly black, everyone, look. And behind there are faces too. Are they people? Why is there something gray-white that resembles a human? Doesn't seem like the living." Xie Lian startled, "What?" They were the corpse rats and hollow shells mimicking humans. The very monsters from Tong Lu had also been teleported here. The hollow shells staggering crookedly, their stiff limbs stepping towards this side. Upon seeing human flesh, the swarm of corpse rats surged forward like a black tide. It seemed Quan No had cast aside everything, sparing nothing, intent only on demolishing the formation of the living, and would only be satisfied once this entire mortal realm suffered a great catastrophe. On the other side, Vu Su instructed Ban Noyak, "You all keep an eye on Bui Tuong Quan, I shall go defend the formation." Bui Min, after a spell of spewing black smoke, heard that and spoke up, "I am fine. Let me go defend the formation." He had just struggled to crawl up when he collapsed back to the ground. Bui, as he saw it was not good, and quickly intervened. "General Bui, you please recover well from your injuries. It is fine for Grandmaster V. You to go defend the formation." It was the first time Bui Min had lost face like this before a woman, and also the first time he had been saved by a woman. His self-esteem acted up, and his face flushed hot as if swelling. Grandmaster Vu did not pay attention to his request, smiling slightly. "General, there is no need to force yourself." She rode the black ox and flew away. General Bui called after her, "Grandmaster Vu." Suddenly an icy cold hand crawled from somewhere and clutched his neck. A deep voice rang out, "Bui Lang." Bui Min was still struggling with all his might. Hearing this voice, he immediately flew into a furious rage. "How are you still alive?" In truth, Tuen Ko was struck down by Deng Quang. Her survival was also thanks to Ban Noyet, who conveniently saved her along with Kok Ma, bringing them down together. Hearing Bui Min's ill tone, she grew even more venomous. "How am I still alive? I have always lived well. And you, what are you doing looking at Grandmaster Vu like that? You change lovers like you change clothes, don't you? You want to pursue her, don't you? What is so good about her?" "I forbid it." Bui Min could not bear it any longer. With one hand he hoisted her entire body up and angrily roared, "Tuen Ko, at a time like this, and you are still clinging to those thoughts? What does changing lovers like changing clothes have to do with anything? I haven't even exchanged a few words with Grandmaster Vu." This was the first time he had laid a hand on Tuen Si. Oh, she was fiercely lifted off the ground by him, utterly stunned. She could not comprehend it. After a long moment she finally composed herself. "Bui Lang, I always think of you because I love you. What is wrong with that? You have never treated me so cruelly. Could it be that you truly detest me that much now?" Bui Min propped his hand on his sword, supporting himself to stand up. "I cannot talk to you." Tuen Ko still would not give up. "Tell me, do you truly not need me? For your sake I have done so many things only to end up in this state. Are you not moved even a little? Don't you feel a shred of remorse?" Min said hundreds of years ago, "Did I not grant your wish?" Ko suddenly became bewildered, at a loss. She didn't know what to do now, her two hands still clinging tightly to his back. Hopping step by step on her broken legs. Bui Lang, wait a moment, we can talk, can't we? Ban Noyet, seeing her in such a state, knew that in the past, after Min had abandoned her, she had killed countless innocent people and even harbored ambitions to kill them all, yet her current appearance was still somewhat pitiable. Min turned his head back to look at her, and finally spoke up. Ko, it's time you woke up as well. Ko widened her eyes. Wake up? Min continued, your transformation into this state is partly due to me, but the greatest cause is still your own choice. All the things you've done can only touch your own heart, but I am a man with a heart of stone. Instead of loving me, it would be better if you loved yourself more. He withdrew the lapel from Xianjie's hand, walking away without once turning his head. On the other side, in the living people's formation, Shi Qingxian fanned once, his spiritual power already having not much left. This urgent situation could only allow the Rainmaster and several martial gods to come forward to obstruct. Who would have known? At this very moment, from all directions resounded many chaotic sounds. Quack, quack, quack. Is this really the Imperial City? Quack, quack, truly a big house. Quack, quack. What's there to be surprised about? It's not even as big as the City Lord's house. It's not as beautiful as the City Lord's house either. At the street corners, in the alleys, on the eaves, many strange figures suddenly appeared, ceaselessly bustling. Suddenly, monstrous spirits from Ghost City surged in simultaneously from nowhere. Tianyan Kai, standing in the formation upon seeing this scene, couldn't bear it and shouted loudly, where are these ghosts from? Get out! Go somewhere else. The Imperial City is right under the feet of immortals. You still dare to come here to show off your might. This pig demon still dares to manifest before my face. I'm not mistaken, am I? That's a duck. The duck is hitting a rat? Suddenly, a pile of fruits clattered as they were thrown towards them. Shut up, you stinky Taoist. Thick-skinned and shameless. If it weren't for the City Lord's orders, who bother to care about you? Why don't you quickly kneel down and thank us? The horde of corpse rats exuded a dark aura, their eyes glinting red. However, the situation was not like what they imagined. One rat had just been killed when they saw an even more numerous horde of ghosts charging forward. The monstrous spirits, some bearing their claws, others holding knives and forks, as if they had just experienced a brutal famine. Their eyes glinted with an even more ferocious fiery red glow. So many rats. Come on, hee, we've waited for you for a long time. I've never gotten to try 2,000-year-old drinking snacks before. It's definitely very nourishing. So many, can we eat it all? The City Lord said, if you can't eat it all, you can carry it away and sell it. The horde of corpse rats saw the situation was unfavorable, and were frightened and retreated. The empty human-like shells were made to stumble by the chaotic running rats. Danger was eliminated. Xie Lian let out a sigh, turned his head and said, it's thanks to San Lang. Hua Cheng smiled. They wanted to help on their own. It has nothing to do with me. Focus on the main task, Gage, be careful. With the last two words, his voice became utterly serious. Xie Lian shifted his gaze only to see the giant who had just stirred, his hand reaching for his waist, as if wanting to draw out something. He suddenly felt tense. That was a sword. Book 5 Chapter 228. This form alone was already incredibly difficult to contend with. Now it also held a sword, so wasn't it like a tiger growing wings? Xie Lian felt something was amiss, bowed down and cried out loudly, everyone, be careful. The horde of ghosts was frantically smashing the rats, their momentum soaring to the sky. Hearing this, they immediately looked up in astonishment. Uncle? Oh, my mistake, look, it's the giant Taoist. Yeah. It seems the City Lord is having a lot of fun playing up there. Quack, quack. Xie Lian was flustered. No. It's not playing. Before he could finish speaking, a sword engulfed in ghost fire, burning with murderous intent, slashed down. Xie Lian hastily let go of his hands, barely managing to dodge that terrifyingly hot slash. The divine statue could originally only barely resist the opponent. There was absolutely no way it could retaliate. The situation was critical, so he thought of borrowing a few martial gods to combine into a sword. However, currently, Quan Yizhen was in the Black Water Sea, lying on the back of a bone dragon, swimming all over the sea to collect corpses and heal his injuries. Lang Qianxiu was taking the place of 100 people, resisting the rampaging resentful spirits within the formation. As for Feng Xian and Mu Qing, no one knew what had happened. They hadn't been seen since descending from Xianjing. The only one free was Pei Ming, whose entire body was scorched black, running to smash rats while coughing up smoke, absolutely refusing to be outdone by the Rainmaster's cert. Only 8/10 unreliable. Was there truly no one usable? Suddenly a voice echoed from below. "Wait, Your Highness. Your sword, go get it quickly." That voice belonged to the Imperial Preceptor. Xie Lian lunged forward, bending down to the ground. "What? Where is my sword?" The Imperial Preceptor cried out loudly. "Crimson Rain sought flower. Activate the shortened distance. Hurry to Mount Tonglu. Your sword is there." Hua Cheng decisively tossed up a die. "Activate." Layers of dark, hazy clouds covered the sky, and something roared as it flew towards them. A moment later, Xie Lian narrowed his eyes slightly, looking upwards. Indeed, there was a sword. The divine statue grabbed the long sword and leaped up. Xie Lian clasped his hands, forming a spell seal, and the divine statue, following his command, firmly gripped the hilt and slashed towards Xianjing. The opponent immediately raised its sword to block the blow. Yet, as the two swords clashed, something utterly unexpected happened. The sword in Xie Lian's hand instantly cut the giant fire sword into two pieces. The sound of shattering metal echoed, shaking heaven and earth. The giant stood still, unmoving. Suddenly its limbs detached, falling straight down to the ground. Xie Lian was also completely unprepared for this sword to be so powerful, capable of a one-hit kill. He was stunned, gazing at the sword in the divine statue's hand. A faint light ran along the blade, extremely sharp. What kind of sword was this? After all? Suddenly remembering that the Imperial Preceptor had told Hua Cheng to activate shortened distance to Mount Tonglu, he immediately understood everything. This sword, he feared, was precisely forged from the bodies of 3 monstrous mountains. In any case, there was no time for much thought at the moment. If this giant stone figure were to fall, it would certainly cause some highly unpleasant incidents. Xie Lian immediately controlled the divine statue to rush down, catching one large stone, then changing direction to catch each of the remaining ones, after which he found an open space to set them down. Finally, the divine statue sheathed its sword at its hip, stood solemnly in place, one hand supporting the sword, the other hand lifting 2 figures as if lifting flowers, not moving at all but only smiling, returning to the demeanor of a martial god. Not a single stone block collided with the ground. Everyone in the imperial city was safe. Not a single hair harmed. Humans, gods, and ghosts all looked at each other, only speaking after a long while. Defeated him already? Ta Lin and Hua Cheng jumped down from the divine statue's palm, rejoining everyone. Shi Qingxian went from cold sweat to hot sweat. The Wind Master's fan, broken and tattered from being lashed about, was stuck at his hip. He hopped while trying to drag one broken leg. "Crown Prince Highness, are you all right? Is everything resolved?" Several other heavenly officials also stepped for war. From behind. "Emperor, where is Junwu? Crown Prince Highness, have you defeated him? Is he dead?" The Imperial Preceptor said. "How could that be? Crown Prince Highness, he will not be easily defeated like that." Hua Cheng extended his hand towards Ta Lin. "Gij, let us go up and search." He immediately nodded, placing his hand onto his hand. Hua Cheng gently pulled him towards the rubble. The host of ghosts, having eaten their fill and gotten drunk, also felt bored, then jumped up to follow, each one eagerly wanting to tour the heavenly capital. Hua Cheng said, "Stay a little far from this place. Those who have no task should not come near. Otherwise, should they encounter Junwu, they could truly only stand still and await death." Hearing this, the host of ghosts obediently returned, holding their ground below. However, even after digging through the rubble of the heavenly capital, there was no trace of Junwu. Ta Lin and Hua Cheng searched around, even turning over the tattered Divine Might Hall. They could not find a single person. Suddenly, Lang Qianxiu came to speak with Pei Ming. "General Pei, I have a very important matter. Would you trouble yourself to lend me a hand?" Just now, Pei Ming had also exerted himself to kill corpse rats, yet still could not kill as many as the Rain Master, and thus was extremely vexed, then was suddenly pulled away. He only rubbed his nose, not knowing what to say. Lang Qianqiu jumped onto the rubble, dug for a while, finally Tanan. Ji over a piece of the roof, he cried out, found it. As soon as Ta Lin heard this, he hurriedly turned back. Qianqiu, be careful. He still thought that Lang Qianqiu had found Jun Wu, who would have thought. He had instead found something burnt pitch black, shrunken like an insect's corpse, and from within it, a very small cough could still be heard. Ta Lin tensed, running quickly to Lang Qianqiu's side, and together they peeled open that corpse-like thing. Indeed, inside was a child curled up, both hands covering its head, its entire body flushed red, severely burnt, but luckily its life was not affected, still coughing. He tipped the corpse-like thing over, and a few green flames immediately secretly flew out. Ta Lin was surprised. This is. Lang Qianqiu hurriedly caught them, his two eyes seeming to flash with sparks. Heaven has eyes. Qi Rong, you are still not completely dead, and finally still fell into my hands. Seeing this appearance, indeed Qi Rong had truly turned into Green Lantern Night Roamer, literally. He suddenly remembered when Jun Wu set fire, Qi Rong had shielded Gu Zi, thanks to which it was not burnt to death. This was truly a bit unexpected for Ta Lin. After all, with his temperament, he should have immediately used Gu Zi to block the fire for himself. Hua Chong took one look and immediately knew what he was thinking. Even if he had brought that child to block the fire, it would not have shielded much. In a flash it would also have been burnt to ash. Yes, sacrificing it and protecting it, to him the outcome would not be very different. That also made sense. This action of his was precisely protecting it. Qi Rong was completely burnt, only green flames that could not dissipate remained, and upon being caught by Lang Qianqiu, immediately squawked loudly. Kok too was saved. As soon as he woke up, he hurriedly hugged Lang Tian, thus, leg brother, don't kill my father. Lang Tian Thursday angrily shouted, let go. I warn you, your pleas are useless to me. I will not show any mercy out of sentimentality. Having said that, he squeezed the wisp of flame even tighter. Tik Dung had slaughtered his entire family, therefore, the grievances between the two of them, Ta Lin could not interfere. Fearing that Lang Tian thus rage would injure Kok too, he intended to pull Kok too away, but unexpectedly, it immediately rushed to embrace him. Scrap metal brother, quickly save my father. Ta Lin was bewildered. Kok too, that person is truly not your father. How he treated you, do you not know? Kok too said, that is my father. Before, father did not treat me well, but later he treated me very well, giving me meat to eat every day, and even said he wanted to take me to the truly beautiful rooms here. He treats me very well. Scrap metal brother, please save my father, alright? Tik Dung shouted, you foolish child, don't beg him. That evil-hearted one cloaked as a snow lotus. He will not save this old man. He even wishes this old man would die and disappear from his sight. Why would he care how I live or die? Hua Chong glanced and coldly said, are you afraid that Lang Tian Thursday alone cannot beat you to death, and thus it's imperative that I join in as well, or what? Tik Dung had always been very afraid of him, and as soon as he heard him speak, the wisps of flame immediately shrank down completely. Nevertheless, since death was inevitable, he desperately retorted, dog Hua Chong, as if I'm afraid of you. Ta Lin, don't think I don't know. I consider you my divine being, but you, what do you consider me? You clearly consider me nothing. You detest me, consider me a fool, a madman, sick, you utterly loathe me. You clearly always look down on me. What right do you have to look down on me? You couldn't even wipe out those cowardly Yong'an people, truly a piece of trash. Ta Lin only spoke one word, yet seeing Hua Chong silent and unmoving, he had an ominous premonition, and immediately hurried to pull him. Enough, let it go, let it go. Hua Chong was no longer in the mood to feign a smile, merely huffed, so what if I look down on you? From head to toe, is there any point on you for people to respect? Tik Dung was so enraged he almost spat blood. I despise, I despise, I despise. If you're so good, then go ahead and look down on me. This old man, this old man, this old man has a son. Tik Dung laughed wildly like a madman. Ha ha ha. Though it's a bit troublesome, it's still better than having no one to carry on the family line like you two. Don't even dream of having one in another 800 years. Ha! Ta Lin and Hua Chong looked at each other, saying nothing. Hua Chong also did not wish to waste words on Tik Dung, merely raised an eyebrow at Ta Lin, and mouthed, it's not entirely impossible. Ta Lin knew he was joking and smiled helplessly. Unexpectedly, Tick Dung's frantic laughter gradually grew softer. The smooth green wisps of flame danced up and down, finally extinguishing. Lang Tian Thursday did not know if Tick Dung extinguished the flames himself or if he was squeezed until the flames extinguished. His expression was utterly bewildered. Kok too was no less bewildered, hurrying to pry open each of his fingers. No longer seeing the green wisps of flame, it then ran to the charred black corpse, peeling at it repeatedly until its hands were stained with pitch-black ash, yet still could not find that green light. It couldn't help but tug at the hem of Lang Tian Thus' robe, insisting, "Where is my father?" It asked Lang Tian Thursday, but Lang Tian Thursday did not know how to answer, only silently looked at Ta Lin. Ta Lin also did not know what to say, merely sighed, and turned to leave. From behind, Kok Tu's voice echoed, still ceaselessly asking, "Brother, where is my father? He is still alive, isn't he? He said he cultivated into some kind of most formidable great king of the three realms. He definitely won't die. He is still alive, isn't he?" Thero. Ubblesome Tick Dung had finally disappeared. Yet, Ta Lin found himself at a loss for words, unable even to comprehend the state of his own heart at that very moment. In truth, upon careful reflection, he found himself utterly unable to refute anything Tick Dung had uttered. From childhood until now, towards this younger cousin, he had seemingly never truly held him in high regard. From the very beginning, he had treated Tick Dung with pity, which later evolved into helplessness, a persistent headache, a desire for him to simply vanish from sight, always striving to turn a blind eye to him. As Tick Dung himself had declared, he had indeed scorned him. It was true, he had scorned him. It was not merely scorn. He had even once hated Tick Dung to the point of wishing to grind his ashes to dust, scattering them from north to south. Yet, after such a long passage of time, having endured so much, upon meeting Tick Dung again, he felt nothing but weariness, a sense of nuisance. He even found himself feeling a touch more scorn. It was neither a joyous affair, nor one that could evoke profound sorrow. After searching for a time, he ultimately yielded no discovery. The moment he descended from the heap of ruins, Su Tan Huin, who had been waiting for a considerable time, rushed towards him, asking, "Your Royal Highness, what news?" Ta Lin shook his head. He could not be found. How could he not be found? The heavenly officials also voiced their thoughts. Could he really be dead? Perhaps dissolved into mist and smoke? If he has escaped, then that is truly terrifying. Where could he possibly have escaped to? So many people are here. Could no one have seen him? Su Tan Huin looked around. "Your Royal Highness, there is a question I have wanted to ask from the beginning. Where are Nanyang and Xianzhen?" Indeed, no one had seen Fong Tin or Mu Tin. The heavenly officials panicked, speaking over one another in a flurry. Could it be that the two generals are trapped within the palace, just like General Pei, ensnared and unable to escape? Possible. I saw General Nanyang earlier. What's more, at that moment he appeared to be searching for someone. Book 5 Chapter 229. Ta Lin whispered to Hoa Tan, "I don't know what might have happened to Mu Tin. As for Fong Tin, he went to search for Kim Lan and the fetus spirit. Could it be that he did not depart with the other divine officials, but remained in Xianjing to search for someone, only to be flung into the sky, then dropped to the ground, suffocated by water or scorched to death? What's more terrifying, he might be in Junwu's hands." The state preceptor stepped to his side. "Your Royal Highness, there is no need to search further. If Junwu were truly here, he would not be skulking about like this. Although there are many divine officials over there, not a single one would he deign to notice. Besides this place, he can only be in one other location. What's M? Or he desires you to follow him." Ta Lin immediately understood clearly. Tonglu Mountain? The state preceptor nodded. "I only fear he has already managed to deploy the shrinking 1,000 miles of land array. Aside from Xianjing, that is the only territory where he becomes most formidable." Su Tan Huin gasped in astonishment. "Huh? You mean to go to Tonglu Mountain? What would you do in that dreadful place?" Ta Lin said, "I have come one time already. It's quite all right. Cannot say it is too horrible. I fear Fong Tin and Mu Qing are also there." National Master replied, "Do not neglect vigilance. This time you're confronting him is precisely proving that you and he are not alike." Stopping a little, he continued, "I will go with you all. It is best to find a few reliable martial gods to help a hand. Any who are injured, disregard them. Bringing them along will only add hindrance. This problem made Ta Lin even more troubled. Reliable martial gods? Before, there were still a few trustworthy people, but at this moment, where would they come from? Some were beaten ragged, some burned to charcoal, some went missing. And then there were those hugged tightly by children, crying and not letting go. Hua Cheng said no need to find anyone to help. They are all useless anyway. My going with Gij is enough. National Master shook his head. Certainly, it is not enough. The voice full of dissatisfaction of Pei Ming resounded in the distance. Crimson rain sought flower. I hope you do N. Oh, to use that absolutely certain tone, what is this? They are all useless anyway. Shi Qingxian laughed loudly. General Pei, you are burned to a charcoal heap like that already. The number of rats killed is not even as many as Martial Master you. What else are you dissatisfied about? It had been a long time since he had seen Pei Ming. As soon as he saw his face, he immediately thought of teasing him for fun. Pei Ming was as if stabbed by him with a knife, wanting to grab him, but his legs were aching, powerless, feeling even more uncomfortable in his heart. Suddenly a voice interjected, wait, there is also me. I will go with you all. Everyone immediately separated to two sides, turning their heads to look. Indeed, the person speaking was none other than Mu Qing. Unbeknownst since when, he had stood together in a group with the divine officials. Ta Lin saw him and immediately sighed a breath. Mu Qing, why are you only arriving now? Where did you go earlier? You made me think that you too had gone missing. Mu Qing nonchalantly, I was always here. Hua Cheng crossed his arms, casting a glare at him. Always here? Yet not speaking up, also not participating in the battle? Mu Qing faintly replied, I said I was always here. It's just that I didn't say a word and you all didn't see me, that's all. However, earlier, so many times there was a shortage of manpower, yet he could not be found anywhere. Asking everyone yielded no one who had met him, which was precisely why it was concluded that General Xianzhan was missing. Ta Lin suddenly held hope. Could it be that Fong Tin was also among the crowd? It's just that he hadn't discovered him yet. After searching around, indeed still no trace of Fong Tin was found. He reluctantly said, all right then. Don't you want to give us a hand? That's great, finally there is someone usable. Hearing that, Mu Qing immediately stepped forward. Seeing him approach, the expressions of the National Master and Hua Cheng were both displeased, not different from each other in the slightest. From before until now, the two of them fundamentally did not favor Mu Qing very much. For Hua Cheng, there was no need to reiterate the reason. For the National Master, from the very beginning he had not wanted to accept Mu Qing as a disciple. This was probably already too obvious. Now he even volunteered to help. It would be better if he didn't help at all. Mu Qing also could not notice their attitude, but when passing by still did not forget to bow to the National Master, in a low voice. Master. National Master nodded, not saying another word. After all, Mu Qing had not yet committed anything earth-shattering. If he wanted to help, there was also no reason to chase him away. National Master said to Shi Qingxian, the divine statue of His Highness the Crown Prince will guard here. After a few more days, the resentful spirits will weaken. You and those others remember to watch over carefully. Shi Qingxian also nodded, of course. But senior, wait. A moment, won't you? I have asked you many times already, yet you haven't even bothered to answer me a single word. Who exactly are you, senior, from what realm? National Master did not reply. Those few people followed Hua Cheng to an empty plot of land. Hua Cheng unhurriedly tossed up a dice. Who would have thought, just as he was preparing to perform his spell, he glanced at his palm, and suddenly his expression slightly changed. Ta Lin also easily noticed it, hastily asked San Lang, what is wrong? Cannot 1,000-mile shrink the ground be deployed? Hoa Tan calmed down, gently smiling, no. It's just that, very rarely do I throw out a result like this. He opened his palm, extending it towards Xie Lian. He stepped forward to look, and was suddenly utterly stunned. In his pale palm there was only a solitary die lying there, and on the face of the die, there was exactly one red dot. From before until now, every time Hoa Tan threw the dice, 6 deep red dots would appear. The act of throwing one dot was extremely rare. Xie Lian's voice trembled slightly. Does this score have any meaning? Something like, if we're not careful, we'll fail, for example? Hoa Tan replied, according to my past experience, it roughly means there is something extremely dangerous waiting for us ahead. In his heart, Xie Lian suddenly felt a sense of uneasy apprehension. Behind them, the national master sighed, "Oh dear, how many times have I told you young people? Gambling is not good at all. Quick. Why give it up? Your Highness, look, where did he pick up such bad habits, I wonder?" Although he knew this was an inauspicious omen, Hoa Tan remained unhurried as if nothing had happened, putting away the die, and said with a smile, "This was thrown just for fun. The number of dots doesn't matter. Whether it's dangerous or not is all for me to decide." He reached out to open the gate, tilting his head slightly. "Let's go, Gidge." Having said that, he turned, striding into the gate. Xie Lian unconsciously ran over, gripping his hand tightly, in his heart seemingly wanting only to blurt out, "Didi, don't go." Yet he knew without even thinking that such a thing was impossible. Finally, he could only say softly, "Let's go." "But, Didi, you must remember, no matter what happens, don't leave my side. I will definitely protect you." Hearing this, Hoa Tan was slightly startled. A moment later, the corner of his mouth curved up, as if he were smiling. "All right. Gidge must protect me very well then." Mu Qing stood to one side, watching silently. In his eyes it was unclear whether fear or disgust was hidden. As soon as Hoa Tan opened the gate, a terrifying wave of heat blasted straight into his face, extinguishing the malice in his gaze. Not long before that, the volcano had erupted once. Right at this moment, the sky was still thick with smoke, the vast forest was surrounded on all sides by flames, and embers turned into ash and dust flying everywhere. The scene was no different from a furnace eye. In hell, submerged in a blazing red, Mount Tonglu had completely transformed. Xie Lian and everyone stood in a cave located on a high mountainside. As soon as they stepped out, they were almost assaulted by smoke and dust, making it hard to breathe. He reluctantly asked, "Is he truly here?" Mu Qing replied, "Perhaps he is around here." Xie Lian shook his head. With the volcano erupting like this, everywhere has already been burned down to nothing. The national master suddenly spoke up, "I know where he is. Around here, surely only that place would be undamaged. You all follow me, you will know once we go." Everyone followed behind him, gradually descending the mountainside. All along the way, Hoa Tan walked ahead of Xie Lian, clearing away the rocks, soil, and boulders that blocked their path, holding his hand and leading him step by step. If not for him, perhaps Xie Lian would have long since tripped on a rock and tumbled head over heels down the steep slope. Who would have thought? He did not trip, but someone else did. Mu Qing, walking last, suddenly missed a step. His whole body swayed, losing balance as if he were about to fall off the mountain. Xie Lian, standing nearby, quickly reached out and caught him. "Be careful." Mu Qing was slightly startled, regaining his composure, and replied indifferently, "I know." Xie Lian released his hand. Indeed, he gradually perceived that there was something unusual about Mu Qing. He suddenly recalled something, swiftly descending 2 steps to lean close to Hua Chang, and asked in a low voice, "San Lang, back on the snowy mountain peak, when Feng Xian and Mu Qing had that skirmish, what did you hear them say? Why did they suddenly become so enraged?" Hearing this, Hua Chang's expression grew faintly chill. So it was this matter. Those two spoke without any regard for their words, uttering a few disrespectful remarks towards Gidge. Xie Lian was taken aback. "Oh? What words were spoken?" Hua Chang gently shook his head. "Gidge need not concern himself with such defiling words. Let us descend swiftly." All four descended the mountain safely. After traversing a certain distance, they were halted by a river. Yet what flowed there was not crystalline river water. Instead, it was a deep crimson liquid, still effervescing and rumbling. It was molten rock. With such a temperature, let alone falling in, even approaching it would suffice to incinerate ordinary mortals. Fortunately, none of them were mere mortals, thus they could withstand it without their very bones being melted away. The imperial preceptor ceaselessly wiped the sweat streaming down his forehead. "He awaits us on the opposite bank." However, this place, which was originally a defensive canal for the city, has now transformed into this, leaving us no means of crossing. Xie Lian sighed. "It seems we shall require some means to cross this river." Book 5 Chapter 230. If a colossal divine statue were present here, merely a few strides would suffice to cross. However, it is currently guarding the myriad resentful spirits within the royal city, and the 3 monstrous mountains have already transmuted into swords for him, rendering their presence here of no avail. Xie Lian tilted his head, inquiring San Lang. Are your silver butterflies capable of bearing us across through flight? Hua Chang replied, the molten rock is so fiercely scorching I fear the silver butterflies would be consumed by fire and reduced to ash by the time they reached the river's center. To fly merely to the river's midpoint, then to plummet from above, plunging headfirst into the molten current, such a sight would indeed be rather unseemly. Hua Chang then continued, however, a path already presents itself. All eyes followed his gaze. Xie Lian was astonished. How can human corpses be floating upon the molten rock? It was undeniably true. He was certain his eyes had not deceived him. Only a moment ago, for a fleeting instant, he had even glimpsed a pallid hand extending from the layer of lava. After a meticulous observation, Mu Qing also spoke up. It is truly real. Furthermore, there is not merely one. There were at least hundreds, perhaps thousands, of corpses and human heads floating haphazardly upon the river's surface. Some spun in endless circles, while others rose and fell with the molten current. Their bodies were uniformly a grotesque, pallid white, their faces twisted and indistinct, clearly not those of the living. Xie Lian immediately grasped the truth. Hey are the pseudo-human empty shells from Wuyong Royal City, carried here by the molten rock's current. Given their extraordinary prowess, using these empty shells as stepping stones to leap across would likely not prove overly difficult. However, these very shells were already writhing in agony, consumed by the molten rock's searing heat, and to be further trodden upon by them now would be somewhat lamentable. Yet, matters had reached such a pass that there was no longer time to spare a thought for them. Xie Lian said to the imperial preceptor, allow me to convey you across first. After all, the national preceptor was not a martial god, not even having cultivated from a young age, so someone certainly had to help him cross over. Hearing him speak thus, he could only nod, stepping towards him. Hua Chang hurriedly said, Gidge, let me. Out of habit, Xie Lian immediately agreed, all right. Hua Chang walked over to the national preceptor's side, supporting his arm as if helping an elderly and frail person, and calmly said, National preceptor, please, esteemed elder, go first. Watch your step. The national preceptor immediately turned his head back, seeing that the person supporting him was not Xie Lian, and slightly furrowed his brow. Ah? How come it's you? Xie Lian thought to himself. 1. Hua Chang was worried he didn't have enough strength, so he came to help, and 2. He had some purpose, so he needed to curry favor with that elder, and it was also for this reason that he insisted on helping him. The thought itself was amusing. He lightly coughed once. San Lang truly and sincerely wanted to come and help, so Hua Chang also smilingly said, it's me or Gidge. It's no different. What's more, I greatly respect you, so of course I wouldn't mind coming to lend a hand. The national preceptor was also momentarily speechless. If you truly respect me, then take back that fake smile on your face. This is truly outrageous. Hua Chang immediately stopped smiling. Without saying a second sentence, he shouldered the national preceptor and swiftly flew to the other side of the bank. His body flickered in and out of sight with extreme speed. The national preceptor hadn't even had time to react before he was placed beside Mu Tin, his entire person dumbfounded. Even the hollow shells that Hua Chang had kicked several times didn't know they had just been kicked. They only raised their heads and looked around for a moment, seeing nothing, then scratched their heads, looking strange, before continuing to bury their faces and swim in the lava. A moment later, the national preceptor recovered his senses, glanced at Hua Chang, and calmly commented, your skills are decent. On the other side, Xie Lian thought to himself, that's too strict. With such skills, how can it only be called decent? He let out a sigh and said, I'll also cross over. Hua Chang hurriedly turned around. Gidge, you wait there. I'll come over to pick you up. However, Xie Lian's movements were faster than his words. He gathered strength and jumped over, kicking once on the face, once on the belly of the hollow shells. Suddenly feeling something hard underfoot, his body sank slightly, but luckily he managed to jump away in time, landing on the head of another one. After stepping on 5 or 6 of them, Xie Lian finally reached the middle of the lava stream. Just as he was about to fly up, his body suddenly sank again, and he nearly lost his footing. With quick reflexes he maintained his balance, bowing his head to look below. There was a pale hand gripping his ankle tightly. Xie Lian exclaimed in alarm, oh no, not again. It was his wretched bad luck striking again. The others crossed the river time and again, all safe and sound, but just as he crossed, he encountered an annoying monster, gripping him tightly, not letting him escape. The human-shaped hollow shells could float on the surface of the lava because they had no internal organs, but they also couldn't bear much additional weight. The rising heat made Xie Lian's entire body drenched in sweat, and a corner of his sleeve caught fire and burst into flames. If he stood there any longer, he feared it would drag his leg down into the lava, or perhaps his entire body would be incinerated. At this moment of dire peril, indeed, necessity is the mother of invention. Rui flew out, pulling a hollow shell 3 meters away closer. He stepped his left foot onto it, thus balancing his weight. Once he stood firm, Xie Lian then Dr. Ew Fong Xian, chopping off the arm gripping his foot. Just as he was about to jump away from there, suddenly, a red-clad figure appeared right beside him. Xie Lian was surprised. San Lang? I'm fine, you don't need to come anymore. Hua Cheng unleashed a palm strike, smashing the hollow shell that had just touched Xie Lian. Well, talk after we get to shore. After the two of them safely reached the shore, Xie Lian then spoke. I'm truly sorry, I've made you worried. Hua Cheng said, that was my fault. I should have told you to wait for me to return and pick you up before I left. The National Master interrupted. All right, stop it. His Highness isn't that delicate and weak. Even if you weren't there, he could handle himself. Pick up what? Pick up. Let's go. This way. They walked for a while, finally arriving at the imperial city of Wurong. More than half of the imperial palace was completely buried. As they entered, they saw a passageway leading deep underground. After descending, the heat gradually faded. The entire palace was empty, so much so that even a small sound created an echoing reverberation. They chanted a spell, and flames instantly ignited in their palms, illuminating their surroundings. Although the imperial palace had been covered in dust for countless years, its splendor was still clearly visible. The firelight shone upon the gold-plated patterns, making them shimmer even more brightly, highlighting the exquisitely carved pillars. The only thing was, there was not a single soul here. The air was as silent as an ancient tomb. The National Master said, this is precisely where His Royal Highness the Crown Prince grew up. Mu Qing wondered, is he truly here? The National Master nodded. Look, only in this place does his spiritual power become the strongest. Therefore, you must definitely be careful. Suddenly, Xie Lian discovered something. The eye on Yiming's saber hilt was incessantly rolling wildly, agitated and unusual. Hua Cheng's demeanor, however, was exceptionally aloof, completely unconcerned. Xie Lian could not resist and reached out to stroke it once. Only then did Yiming regain its composure, lying still without moving. Hua Cheng slightly lowered his head, seeing Xie Lian's hand still resting on the saber hilt, and seemed about to say something. Just at this moment, a man's hee-hee-hee laugh echoed from the corner of the room, sounding incredibly cunning and deceptive, seemingly with no good intent. The hairs on Xie Lian's body stood on end. This sound, he seemed to have heard it a few times before. It was the sound of the fetus spirit. Mu Qing roared, where is it? He shot out a fireball, illuminating the entire room. Indeed, in a corner high above the palace, the fetus spirit was clinging to a cluster of white flowers, looking no different from a lizard. It stuck out its vivid red tongue to lick its own back. Seeing the firelight fly towards it, it laughed maniacally, spitting something towards Mu Qing. He immediately leaned back to dodge, displaying an expression of disgust. The National Master looked at the gooey mess on the ground, then turned to stare at the fetus spirit. Is this truly the son of that scoundrel Feng Xian? Xie Lian hastily called out, wait. Thak. Your name is Thak, isn't it? Seeing someone call its name, the fetus spirit paused for a moment, lowering its head to look at him. Xie Lian said, Thak, we've come to find your father. Do you know where he is? The fetus spirit heard the 3 words your father and let out a cold laugh, then scuttled away on all fours, vanishing from sight. Xie Lian was surprised. Thak? Quick, follow it. Everyone shot fireballs high into the air, searching all around them. Suddenly Mu Qing spoke up, over here. Xie Lian paused, over there? Mu Qing pointed at a passage, saying I just saw it crawl into here. The passage he had just pointed at lay in the corner of the palace. It was none other than a pitch-dark, eerie corridor, its end point unseen, and it was also unknown where it led. Hua Cheng was suspicious. Did you truly witness it crawl inside? Mu Qing replied, what benefit would I gain by deceiving you all? Hua Chang gave a faint smile, although he did not show any particular attitude. He also did not trust Mu Qing that much. Guosher sighed at this moment. What is there still to debate? If we see any suspicious place, we should not ignore it. Let us quickly go in and check it out. The corridor before Ri was perhaps very wide, however, after being squeezed by earth and rocks, the passage narrowed, only remaining enough for one person to pass. Just now, having been doubted by Hua Chang, Mu Qing originally felt unreconciled, and thus stepped in first. Of course, Hua Chang would also go ahead of Xie Lian to clear the way. However, Xie Lian then discovered that the pupil on the hilt of the Yiming blade began to spin wildly, and suddenly an ominous premonition arose in his heart. He immediately pulled him back. Hua Chang said, "What's wrong?" Xie Lian coughed softly. I said I would protect you. Stand behind me." In an instant, Hua Chang slightly curved his lips and smiled. The further he walked inside, the more uncomfortable Xie Lian felt. His intuition was extremely accurate when facing dangerous things, thus, whatever made him uncomfortable was perhaps waiting ahead. Killing intent. Moreover, it was not the obvious type of killing intent, but rather a killing intent cold as ice. With each step he advanced further, his nerves became even more strained. Yet, Guosher did not answer him at all. Xie Lian's heart thumped loudly, and he tried to ask again. "Guosher?" Still there was no sound of an answer. Xie Lian hastily turned his head back. Unbeknownst since when behind him there was no longer a single soul. The reason he did not realize was because the two oil lamps that Hua Chang and Guosher held were still floating, lighting up the passage ahead. It was just the owners of the lamps had vanished without a trace. Xie Lian, without saying a word, had turned his head, intending to go look for them. Mu Qing then grabbed him. "What are you doing? We are almost there. Moreover, do you truly think that Crimson Rainsalt Flower would run back that way?" Xie Lian hesitated. San Lang would not do that. It was precisely because Hua Chang would absolutely never leave him alone without saying a word beforehand that everything only became even more terrifying. Xie Lian suddenly remembered an item that Hua Chang had given him, and hastily raised his hand to look. On his third finger, the red thread was still tied tightly as before, proving that Hua Chang had not encountered anything dangerous. Xie Lian let out a sigh, however, thinking of the one-spot dice that Hua Chang had rolled before coming here. His eyebrows twitched even more violently. Mu Tin said, "Even if we turn back now, we might not necessarily find them. It's better if we continue to go forward, to see where this path ultimately leads. If you turn back and find nothing, then you'll have to start over from the beginning. Wouldn't that be a great waste of time?" Xie Lian was about to answer, suddenly lowering his voice. "Shu. Listen, there's a sound." Mu Tin also focused intently on listening. It seemed to be the gasping breath of a man. It was indeed coming from the front. The two heightened their vigilance, assuming an attacking stance, slowly approaching. At the end of the corridor was a chamber. Mu Tin carefully checked inside. Xie Lian flicked his finger. A flame shot forward, immediately illuminating a figure fallen on the ground. As soon as he saw the back of that person, Xie Lian immediately recognized him. Feng Xian. He ran over to help him up. Indeed, it was Feng Xian. His body was covered in burns and sword cuts, but fortunately, it did not affect his life. Xie Lian lightly patted him a few times before he woke up. Yet as soon as he woke, he began to curse at people. Seeing clearly that the person in front of him was Xie Lian, he immediately fell silent. "Your Highness? Why are you here?" Xie Lian let out a breath of relief instead. "Why don't you tell me where this place is?" Feng Xian sat up, looked around for a moment, then said, "What godforsaken place is this?" Indeed, even Feng Xian did not know. Asking was useless. Xie Lian shook his head, grasped Feng Xin's hand, and pulled him up. "Stand up first. Now that I've found you, next is to go find San Lang." Feng Xian was surprised. "You mean Blood Rain-seeking flower? What happened to him? Is he not with you?" Xie Lian said, "It's like this. We were going together when..." Before he could finish speaking, Feng Xian suddenly raised his hand, alarmed. "Wait. Who is that standing behind you?" Xie Lian turned his head, only to see a person dressed in black lurking in the shadows. "That's Mu Tin." "What's wrong?" Feng Xin's pupils contracted. Quickly seize him." That figure stepped closer, revealing his face clearly under the brilliant firelight. Mu Tin's complexion darkened, standing still without saying another word. Feng Xian clung tightly to Xie Lian. When I was in Xianjing, I was searching for someone, when suddenly an assailant ambushed me from behind. Otherwise, how could I have fallen down here? Lin was startled, glaring at Feng Xian. Was it he who hit you? Feng Xian affirmed with absolute certainty, no mistake. It was precisely him. Lin said he hit you, and then you immediately fell unconscious? Feng Xian replied something like that. In short, Dianha, you must be careful. Keep your distance from him or quickly seize him. Mu Qing could not help but speak up. Let you. Lin hurriedly interjected. Wait. Feng Xian, this matter has hidden complications. If he followed behind and ambushed you, and you then immediately fell unconscious, then how did you know the one who hit you was precisely Mu Qing? Feng Xian did not think that he would ask this question, and was slightly startled. Mu Qing immediately seized this flaw, then spoke loudly. At that time, Xianjing was ablaze. Everyone was in chaos. If someone accidentally knocked you unconscious, there's nothing surprising about it. Time and again you always pin everything on me, and even now you still refuse to admit that you were mistaken? Feng Xian clung to Lin, struggling to stand firm, and said in a low voice, no, it must be you. Mu Qing sneered. On what grounds do you falsely accuse me? Feng Xian emphasized every word. It was precisely because at that time Xianjing was ablaze, everywhere were flames, that a shadow was reflected on the ground. Although I couldn't turn my head in time, however, when I fell I managed to see fully the figure and fighting style of that person. There's no mistaking it, it's definitely you. Lin listened attentively to the two of them bickering back and forth. Mu Qing also did not show weakness. All said and done, you still did not see with your own eyes. It's perfectly normal for a reflected shadow to have distortions, and you can look at a shadow and conclude that it was me? What's more, you had just been hit and already fallen unconscious. What else could you have seen clearly? Feng Xian said, I know you so well, how could I possibly not recognize you? Even Dianha could recognize you as well. Of course Lin understood this. In any case, the three of them had grown up together, cultivated together. All their manners, figures, and even fighting styles could not be more familiar. Even without seeing their faces, they could still be 80% certain of recognition. Feng Xian said, Dianha, were you traveling with him? Along the road, did he do anything suspicious? Lin was flustered. Actually, throughout the entire journey, Mu Qing had behaved very suspiciously. However, in this situation he also couldn't very well say it right in front of him. Feng Xian continued to speak. That's not right. Come to think of it, his coming here is already too suspicious. Given his character, would he truly overcome dangers with you to go save people? Is this even Mu Qing? Mu Qing's expression darkened even further. Don't be so assertive in your words. You gave birth to a son, is that not a big deal, surely? So you are very innocent, huh? Lin felt this conversation had gone too far, and hurriedly spoke up. All right. Stop making noise, quiet down. Mu Qing still ignored him, saying, moreover, if I knocked you unconscious, why would I need to waste effort bringing them to find you? Feng Xian retorted, it is precisely because you didn't think of it. You ambushed me from behind, but I still recognized you. Furthermore, nobody knows what strange place this is, and you leading Dianha in here was not necessarily to find me. Huyet Vutam Hoa was traveling halfway with you all, then disappeared, right? Mu Qing said, you think I am an imposter, intentionally leading Tai-Tu Dianha into a trap, right? Excuse me, Tai-Tu Dianha and Huyet Vutam Hoa traveled with me throughout the entire journey. If I were an imposter, would they really not have noticed? Xie Lian murmured, although that is the case, yet, after all, that was merely Mu Qing when he was on the surface. Who could know whether, upon descending into the underground Wuyong Imperial City, taking advantage of their inattention, Mu Qing might have been swapped out. There was no way to guarantee this. Mu Qing stared intently at Feng Xian. Your Highness, I think it would be better for you to stand a little further away from him. We just arrived and already saw him lying here. Then Blood Rain Sought Flower suddenly disappeared, and he again plays tricks to sow discord. Doesn't that make him even more like a fake? White No Face had once transformed into their likenesses. For him to transform again now would be nothing strange. Xie Lian furrowed his brow, saying, how about this? You two tell me something that only the three of us know, for me to test it a little. Mu Qing asked, what matter? Xie Lian pondered for a moment, then casually said, on the snowy mountain peak, what did you two say? The moment he finished speaking, both their expressions froze. Xie Lian crossed his arms seriously. If you two cannot answer, then everything is clear. You are not the real Feng Xian and Mu Qing. We should first ascertain your identities, and everything else can be discussed later. Those two quietly looked at each other, their silence only making Xie Lian more curious, unsure what they were hiding. A moment later, Feng Xian did not answer him either, merely saying, you two have mistaken the main point. I originally had no suspicion that he was a fake. Mu Qing frowned. What is your meaning? Feng Xian said directly from the very beginning. I already knew he was the real Mu Qing. He looks very normal. He didn't do anything strange. Mu Qing clenched his hand, his knuckles crackling, then thrust a palm strike straight towards Feng Xian. Feng Xian being severely injured, reluctantly dodged to one side. That these two would rush into a fight was already within Xie Lian's expectations, yet he still felt an immense headache. Quiet down a little. Or should we settle this with a card game? The moment he made a move, Xie Lian felt the murderous aura around them grow even heavier. Flames flew wildly everywhere, illuminating the entire room. At this moment, Xie Lian finally saw clearly that on the walls, in all directions, hung countless sabers, spears, bows, and swords, all emitting a chilling cold qi. So this place was an armory. No wonder he had felt a murderous aura as cold as ice standing from outside the door. Previously, Xie Lian himself once had an armory that he loved immensely, often spending a very long time there, lingering and unwilling to leave. However, this place made him feel truly uncomfortable, unwilling to stand there for another moment. Yet, those two people were squabbling chaotically, making him unsure whom to trust, whom to fight. To be honest, both of them were equally suspicious. Finally, Xie Lian had no other recourse but to shout loudly, Rui. First, just tie them all up, and then we can talk about it later. Rui, having waited endlessly for a chance to display itself, excitedly jumped up. Who would have thought that before the white silk could even be fully unfurled? Xie Lian suddenly felt an astonishing chill emanating from behind him. He immediately shifted his posture, retracted Rui, and swung it behind his back. Feeling that the white silk had caught something, Xie Lian pulled with all his might, yet it did not budge in the slightest. He began to feel worried. The next moment, he was suddenly pulled backward by Rui, falling precisely into someone's embrace, and was also struck on the hip by something hard and cold as ice. Xie Lian? Although his body did not appear particularly large or sturdy, his strength was certainly second to none. Unless the opponent was a colossal monster, how else could he be pulled so easily? Ta Lin was about to turn his hand and strike a palm, when suddenly a hand wrapped around and embraced his waist. Gidge, it is I. Ta Lin was surprised. San Lang? He lowered his head to look. Indeed, on the arm wrapped around his waist was a silver gauntlet exquisitely carved with an assortment of butterflies and fierce beasts. As he turned his face, he immediately saw a man in red robes, his demeanor calm and leisurely, carrying a sharp silver scimitar by his side. What had just brushed against him was likely this scimitar's hilt. It was Hua Cheng. Ta Lin immediately understood. Just now, it was Rui who had actively pulled him towards Hua Cheng, making him feel as if he were one against two, and naturally, he had been pulled over instantly. He grabbed Rui, growling, you truly are eating from the apple tree, yet fencing the plum tree. Rui had no choice but to feign death, lying perfectly still, not moving an inch. Aline, at his wit's end with it, turned to say to Hua Cheng, San Lang, what happened? Weren't you always walking behind me? And where is Shifu? Hua Cheng replied, this place is very strange. I had walked halfway when I suddenly realized both the path ahead and behind were sealed, which was a bit difficult to resolve, so it took a little time. Even Hua Cheng said it was difficult to resolve, so it seemed it truly was very troublesome and restrictive. In his heart, Ta Lin felt a little uneasy. Are you all right? Hua Cheng said, of course I am all right. But which direction the national master went, I do not know. It's possible he has already gone deep inside. By the way, why are those two fighting so loudly? Ta Lin sighed. Feng Xian and Mu Qing had also noticed Ta Lin. Mu Qing immediately shouted, hey, be a little careful. Don't get close to those who suddenly appeared. The two temporarily ceased fighting, and Feng Xian added, Your Highness, don't have that habit of rushing towards him every time you see him. Ta Lin hurriedly explained, What do you mean, rushing towards him every time I see him? It wasn't that I actively ran to him, it was because of Rui. Speaking of this, he suddenly realized why they were so alarmed. If Feng Xian and Mu Qing were both suspected of being fakes, then couldn't Hua Cheng also be a fake? The person standing before him, was he the real Hua Cheng or not? Hua Cheng raised an eyebrow. You are suspecting me of being a fake, aren't you? Ta Lin raised a hand to his chin, tilted his head, and seriously observed him from top to bottom. Hua Cheng understood his doubtful gaze, and also looked at him very intently. Ta Lin, stared at by him, could no longer concentrate, then turned his face away, thought for a while and then said, I feel that he is real. Mu Qing angrily said, just because you feel it doesn't mean it's right. Don't forget where you are. This is precisely the lair of Bai Wuxiang. Anything that suddenly appears is strange. You should think of a way to test him. Hua Cheng smiled. This is too simple. Gidge, come here, I will let you know a very good method you can immediately tell. Ta Lin heard him say that and immediately stepped closer, humbly asking, what method is it? Mu Qing irritably said, don't just listen to whatever he tells you to do, okay? Whether he is real or fake is still unknown. Hua Cheng calmly said, you recite the first half of the spiritual communication incantation for me to hear. I will recite the latter half for you to hear, and you will immediately know whether I am the real deal or not. The two whispered a few words to each other. Ta Lin immediately turned around, gave a light cough. This person is real. Seeing that, Feng Xian also seemed less tense. Mu Qing was still full of doubt. Are you sure of that? You just saw his face and were already so overjoyed to the point of being in a frenzy. Can you still distinguish between real and fake? Ta Lin blushed. I have affirmed to you that this is not fake. If you still don't believe, then tell me what is real. Hua Cheng interjected, all right. The matter has been completely resolved. Returning to the matter. Gidge, so why did they end up fighting? Ta Lin briefly explained everything to him, taking his hand to support his forehead, and said, it is precisely like that. Truly, I also don't know who is more suspicious. Hua Cheng said, you still have to ask about this. Of course he is more suspicious. Hua Cheng pointed towards Mu Qing. Mu Qing angrily shouted, you must have proof when slandering others? Don't just dump everything onto my head. Hua Cheng faintly smiled, all right. Then I ask you a question. What is that thing on your wrist? Hearing that, Mu Qing's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly retreated backwards, but was quickly caught by Feng Xin's swift hand on the wrist. As expected, tightly fastened on his wrist, was nothing else but a cursed shackle. Mu Qing pushed Feng Xian away, his veins throbbing furiously, glaring at him. Ta Lin saw that thing and immediately gripped his arm tightly. Surprised, Mu Qing, this thing? Mu Qing's face darkened, not saying another word. Hua Cheng said in a deep voice, I suggest you honestly answer all the following questions. Why did Junwu summon you to the Divine Martial Temple? What did he say to you? Why are you perfectly healthy and unharmed, unlike the other heavenly officials? Why is your attitude unusual and you have actively wanted to come to Mount Tonglu to save people? How did that thing get onto your hand? For what reason did you lead us here? Mu Qing saw that the situation was not good, then took a step back and hurriedly said, wait. Don't act so rashly. Listen to my explanation first. Hua Cheng slowly lowered his hand. Please speak. Feng Xian interrupted. First, are you the one who knocked me unconscious? After a moment of silence, Mu Qing finally gritted his teeth and said, let's say it is. But it's not what you two think. Just as Feng Xian was about to burst into a furious rage, Xie Lian stopped him. Let him continue speaking. Volume 5, Chapter 232. Mu Qing took a deep breath, and had no choice but to admit, indeed it was I who struck Feng Xian. Feng Xian roared in anger. I knew it, it had to be you. Mu Qing turned to Xie Lian and continued, but it was because at that time Xianjing was about to collapse. All the divine officials were thinking of ways to escape, only he remained, refusing to leave, not even bothering to listen when called. If he stayed any longer, I feared he would be burned to death by the fire. That's why I intended to knock him unconscious and hand him over to you. Xie Lian said, yet you didn't hand him over to me. Feng Xian went missing, and finally reappeared in this place. Mu Qing sighed because on the way back out, I encountered a few unexpected incidents. What unexpected incidents? Mu Qing said it was the fetid spirit. It suddenly ambushed me from behind, biting wildly all over, preventing me from carrying him. Before I even had a chance to drag him away, Xianjing had already changed its form. So Feng Xian, who was originally lying on the ground, was unknowingly moved to who knows where. If his words were true, then wasn't Mu Qing trying to do a good deed but inadvertently setting a trap, leading Feng Xian to fall into the snare? Xie Lian sighed. You really should have said so sooner. Feng Xian also agreed what you did was no different from wanting me to burn to death in Xianjing. What in the world were you thinking, to knock me unconscious and abandon me there? Mu Qing's expression stiffened, and he turned to continue speaking to Xie Lian. The fetid spirit refused to leave, squatting right on his chest, and following it was the female ghost Jian Lan. I kept thinking she would wake Feng Xian up or find a way to save him, but I never expected her to merely stare with wide eyes as he burned to death. Xie Lian gradually understood. So, he had actively wanted to enter Mount Tonglu to save someone because his conscience was bothering him. After all, it was he who had knocked Feng Xian unconscious, so he needed to take responsibility, lending Xie Lian a hand. No wonder all along the way, he had been restless, perhaps worried about Feng Xin's fate, whether he was alive or dead. However, taking this as an excuse, it was truly difficult to believe. Feng Xian ruffled his hair in frustration. You truly are. Don't you know I was going to look for someone? If you hadn't knocked me unconscious, I might have already found them. Mu Qing replied. The fetid spirit and Jian Lan are subordinates of Bai Wuxiang, so he definitely wouldn't harm them. What's more, they didn't even want to come along, so you staying there would only waste time. Calling 1,000 times would be useless. It would be better to leave Xianjing first to preserve your life, and then you could search later. Why must you be so stubborn at such a critical moment? I merely presented the best option under those circumstances. Feng Xian could not maintain his composure. Best option, my foot. It's not your business, that's why you think that way. Wait a moment. According to what you said, you wanted to save me at first? Hua Cheng interrupted. There's no need to speak of such nonsense. Answer my question. What did Junwu say to you? Mu Qing suddenly fell silent, seemingly hesitant. Hua Cheng cast a sharp glare at him. Are you now obeying his orders? Mu Tin immediately retorted. Absolutely no such thing. Hua Cheng continued. Then you explain. What is this cursed manacle about? Mu Tin spoke for a long while. His throat seemed dry. His voice also became hoarse. Even if I explain, you all won't believe it. Feng Xian said. From the very beginning when we questioned you, you refused to answer even if it killed you. Now you suddenly confess. Naturally it's hard to believe. Mu Tin gave a faint smile. Why did I refuse to answer from the very beginning? If from the start I had told you everything, you certainly wouldn't have believed me. Knowing it would be like this, why would I admit anything? Even if I admitted it, there would be no way to deny it. Better to just keep my mouth shut. What's more, Feng Xian was already safe and sound. To naturally go and recount old matters would truly be very shameful. With Mu Tin's character, not admitting it was also understandable. Xie Lian patiently said first, let him finish speaking. Mu Tin glanced at Xie Lian, hesitated for a moment before speaking this. It's because he wanted me to make things difficult for His Highness, but I refused to follow. So then, speaking up to this point, his actions became even more peculiar, as if he could no longer open his mouth. Hua Cheng said in a low voice. So he got angry, and then bound this cursed manacle onto you? Mu Tin did not reply. Feng Xian said, is there nothing else? Hua Cheng's expression still showed no change. Honestly speaking, do you think your words are that trustworthy? Mu Tin felt truly humiliated, and coldly said, whether you believe it or not is up to you. My knocking out Feng Xian was just a misunderstanding. I completely did not heed the commands of anyone. Feng Xian sighed. Mu Tin, you had best tell the truth. Mu Tin saw his expression, his knuckles cracking. Am I not still telling the truth? What else do you ultimately want to hear? Do you want me to admit that I surrendered to Jun Wuan? Do you want it to harm you all? In your eyes, I am precisely such a person, isn't that right? Isn't that right, Crown Prince, His Highness? He turned towards Xie Lian, his eyes trembling with grievance. Xie Lian silently looked at him, lost in thought. He was about to open his mouth when Hua Cheng stepped forward, blocking him, face to face with Mu Tin. There's no need to look at His Highness like that. After all, this isn't the first time you've betrayed him. Mu Tin roared. I'm not talking to you. Betray what? Hua Cheng smiled and replied, betray what? Then previously, when His Highness found a place for cultivation geomancy, who was it that ruthlessly seized it, and even shamelessly chased him away? His smile revealed threads of murderous intent. His tone suddenly became icy. Mu Tin was startled, his face turned pale, unconsciously retreating several steps. The matter of him vying for a cultivation spot with Xie Lian was not something to be proud of, therefore he feared most someone intentionally provoking him, repeatedly bringing it up. Although Hua Cheng always displayed a relaxed smile, he was indeed intentionally causing trouble. Mu Tin was scared, which was to be expected, but Xie Lian, upon hearing this, became even more panicked. His fear was precisely because, how did Hua Cheng know about this? Xie Lian and Feng Xian were neither the garrulous type, fond of recounting tales, nor the kind to speak ill of others behind their backs. Although back in the day, Mu Tin's abandonment had dealt him a tremendous blow, he had never run off to complain to anyone. As for the matter of competing for cultivation spots, Xie Lian was even less inclined to mention it, confident that Feng Xian felt the same way. Those more than 30 divine officials certainly wouldn't be foolish enough to tell anyone how they had stolen others' cultivation spots. First, keeping their mouths sealed tight, and second, embellishing the truth. Therefore, afterwards, Xie Lian had not heard anyone spread rumors about this matter. If that were the case, how then did Hua Cheng come to know? Although he had planted quite a few spies in the upper heavenly court, this matter had happened too long ago, some 800 years back, and furthermore, no one had spread it outside. Could this debt still be traced? Mu Tin trembled. How did you know? Who told you? He glanced at Feng Xian, then flickered his gaze towards Xie Lian, finally resting his suspicious eyes upon him. Hua Cheng smiled faintly. You need not look at His Highness. He has never told me about this matter. Wasn't it on the snowy mountain peak that you two spoke of it yourselves? And yet you have forgotten? Mu Tin's face drained of all color. Xie Lian, upon hearing this, could not help but feel a little embarrassed. At that time, Feng Xian and Mu Tin had a huge argument, dragging out one matter after another to expose, naturally including the hidden grievances of yesteryear that no one knew of. No wonder. Upon hearing it, Hua Cheng became furious. However, for some reason, he still felt that the matter was not so simple. Because Xie Lian had thought of something. The crimson-clad Ghost King had burned down numerous temples of martial gods and civil gods. After only a few battles, Hua Cheng's name had become renowned everywhere. He directly defeated 33 divine officials, and afterwards, burned down all of their palaces and temples in the mortal realm. Xie Lian originally did not clearly remember how many divine officials had competed with him for cultivation spots. Even their titles and appearances no longer left any impression, only vaguely recalling there were around 30-some people. So, where had those 30-some people gone? Could it be that these were precisely the 33 divine officials Hua Cheng had kicked out of Xianjing? If that were truly the case, hadn't Hua Cheng already known about this matter long ago? A moment later, Mu Tin reluctantly said that time was different. This time is different. In short, I never intended to. The few people were in a dispute, with noisy words going back and forth. Suddenly Xie Lian launched a palm strike and shouted loudly, "Careful!" Before Mu Tin could understand anything, he was kicked by him and fell sprawling to the ground. 2 streaks of chilling light flew past his face, embedding deeply into the wall behind him. Mu Tin sprang up, brushed off the footprint on his chest and roared, "Did you'd? Oh, that on purpose? Do you want to fight?" Xie Lian hurriedly waved his hand. Sorry. Truly not on purpose. If it had been on purpose, perhaps Mu Tin would have been shot straight into the wall, digging a huge human-shaped hole in it. Immediately, everyone's attention was drawn to the 2 swords embedded in the wall, their tips still trembling violently. Feng Xian roared, "Who is it?" Xie Lian said, "There is no one. They launched themselves." Clang clang. The murderous aura within the room suddenly surged terrifyingly. The weapons hanging on the wall suddenly trembled wildly, colliding with each other, creating a deafening, brain-splitting clangor. Talin cried out, "Hurry, let's run!" Unexpectedly, as he had just turned his head, Feng Tin had yelled, "What are you running out there for? There's no way out. Doesn't this room have no doors at all? So how are we supposed to get out?" Talin was alarmed. Before, there was clearly a door here. Now it's gone. What's wrong with these weapons? Suddenly they've gone mad, emitting such terrifying murderous aura. Hoa Tan extended 2 fingers, catching the long sword flying towards him, and even before using force, he caused it to break into 9 pieces, falling clattering to the ground. He said for a long time they haven't been used by anyone. They feel aggrieved and realizing someone has drawn near, they merely wish to kill. Instinctively, the remaining people suddenly turned their heads to look at Mutin. Mutin immediately said, "This has nothing to do with me." Hoatan replied indifferently, "But it was you who led us in here. I saw the fetus spirit enter, which is why I merely pointed the way for you." Hoatan glanced askance at him. "You were the only one who saw it." Mutin had no more words to retort, his hand clenching tightly. Fong Tin interrupted, "What should we do now? Can't these weapons be appeased?" Hoatan had not yet replied when Talin suddenly remembered having dealt with this kind of demonic entity before, and said, "It's possible. At worst, if they wish to kill, let them kill." Fong Tin said, "But now we can't find an exit, and in the room there are only 4 of us. So what will it have to kill?" Talin was about to answer when suddenly, Hoatan spoke up, 3 people. Fong Tin, 3 people, what do you mean? Hoatan said in a low voice, "Allow me to correct that a little. Trapped in this room there are only 3 people in total." Talin quickly turned his head. Sure enough, in the armory, one person was suddenly missing. It was Mu Tin. He surely wasn't mistaken. Where Mu Tin had just stood, truly not a single soul remained. Fong Tin was alarmed. How could this be? He was just standing here. Hoatan was not particularly surprised. After all, he had encountered such matters once or twice before. This place is by Wu Xiang's domain. Everyone must obey his commands. Thus, whoever he wishes to take, he simply takes. In the past, Fong Tin's time and tea towards Mu Tin had been 8 parts trust and 2 parts doubt, always bickering heatedly and exchanging ample insults, but at this very moment, he didn't know what to say at all. After hesitating for a moment, he finally spoke up, "Your Highness, Mu Tin Could it truly be?" Lian immediately interrupted, "Do not assert hastily. These weapons are preparing to rush over. First, think of a method to help them calm down. Not all will be stabbed into minced meat." Having finished speaking, he immediately turned his hand and drew Fong Xian out. Suddenly, Hua Chang rushed over, pressing his hand down tightly. Lian was startled, hastily raised his head, only to see Hua Chang staring fixedly at him with wide eyes. His pupils seemed to rise with layers of scarlet veins. He said in a deep voice, "Gidge, what are you drawing your sword out for?" Volume 5, Chapter 233. Lian was shocked. "I did not intend to do anything." Hua Chang still grasped his hand. "Then why did you draw your sword out?" Lian said, To defend myself." Hua Chang's countenance darkened, tightening his grip even more. "How do you intend to defend yourself?" "Put down the sword." This was the first time Hua Chang had used such an expression and tone to speak with Lian, causing him to inevitably feel a touch of dread. Fong Xian hastily rushed over. "On what grounds do you make him drop his sword?" and quickly let go of his hand. Suddenly, a gigantic axe shot straight towards him. Lian immediately swung his sword and chopped it away, saying, "How to defend myself, huh? Precisely like this." Seeing this, Hua Chang gradually regained his composure, yet still refused to release his hand. "You do not need to defend yourself. Standing behind me will be sufficient. Listen to me, put down the sword." Fong Xian also picked up his bow, drew his bow as a sword, batting away several spiked maces that were competing to rush over. He said with a skeptical attitude, "What do you mean by continuously holding his hand? Do not be so selfish. Your Highness, the spiritual communication password of Crimson Rain Sought Flower. Besides the 2 of you, does anyone else know it? Is it truly only you who knows it?" Reminded by him, Lian suddenly remembered Hua Chang's spiritual communication password. It was not only the 2 of them who knew it. There was also a 3rd person who had heard it. It was Jun Wu. When in Xianle Palace, he had spiritually communicated with Hua Chang right in front of Jun Wu. He must have heard it clearly and precisely. Nevertheless, for some unknown reason, he still felt that the person standing before him was undoubtedly Hua Chang. It was just that, perhaps he had thought of some unhappy matters, hence he was behaving this way. Hesitating for a moment, Lian then nodded all right. After that, he sheathed Fong Xian. In just an instant, a silver light flashed. The scimitar left its sheath. As Yiming just shot out, the entire room seemed submerged in dazzling light. Sparks flashed continuously. and the sound of metal breaking and shattering resounded deafeningly. Xie Lian and Feng Xian stood amidst it, not daring to move even a little. A mere 10 seconds later, Hua Chang turned around, plunging the scimitar back into its sheath. Xie Lian cast his gaze at him and then immediately looked down at the ground. Several hundred types of weapons, all were chopped into fine powder by Yiming. Xie Lian knelt, picking up 2 broken sword fragments. With a hint of regret in his heart, these things are all rare weapons. Fang Tin suddenly cried out loudly, "Your Highness, the door!" It seems the door has appeared. Xie Lian placed the fragments on the ground, dusted off his robes and stood up. So that's how it is one must deal with this pile of weapons to be able to go out. It should have been that someone sacrificed themselves, allowing them to be killed for the door to be opened, yet Hua Chang had directly used brute force to open it. No sooner had he thought of this than Hua Chang grabbed his hand and pulled him outside. Seeing him radiating killing intent, Fang Tin hesitantly asked, "So, what do you intend to do next?" Xie Lian replied, "Of course, we're going to find the national preceptor and Mu Qing." Hua Chang said calmly, "If Mu Qing truly followed Jun Wu, then first of all I must claim his dog's life." The 3 of them exited the armory. After walking for a while, Xie Lian asked with a slight hesitation, "San Lang am. Omen ago. You thought I would take a sword and stab myself, didn't you?" Hua Chang did not reply, his expression still extremely grim. Xie Lian smiled. "I won't do that." Hua Chang gave a slight side glance. "Is that true?" Having been seen through by him, Xie Lian's heart suddenly felt empty. To be honest, in the past, in a critical situation, he certainly would have resolved it that way. But now he no longer needed to do that. Xie Lian said, "Truly, I assure you. What's more, there were hundreds of different types of blades and swords in there. If each one were to stab me once, wouldn't I be stabbed into shredded flesh?" At this point he suddenly could no longer laugh. Because no sooner had he said the word stab, Hua Chang suddenly froze, staring at him. His gaze Xie Lian had no way to describe, only knowing that it rendered him unable to utter another word. Hua Chang suddenly reached out and drew Xie Lian, pulling him tightly into his embrace. Fang Tin, walking behind, seeing this, immediately cried out in a panic, "Damn it! I'm still standing here." Xie Lian glared at him, then reached out and lightly patted Hua Chang's back. "What's wrong?" he said in a low voice. "Your Highness, you shouldn't laugh like that." He hugged Xie Lian tighter, as if fearing he would vanish. "It's not funny. Truly, it's not funny at all." He remembered before, when he had been curious and wanted to take a look at the poisoned skull, Hua Chang's face had also changed in precisely the same way. Xie Lian's heart suddenly felt an immense wave of guilt. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have teased you like this. I only wanted to tell you not to worry, but I unintentionally hurt you." Fang Tin seemed to be given goosebumps by this atmosphere, and said hesitantly, "Well then, don't be like that again next time." He was already so serious. Hua Chang gently released Xie Lian, and said in a deep voice, "Let's go." Without the state preceptor guiding their way here, the 3 had no other choice but to venture deeper into the imperial palace. However, they had not gone far when Xie Lian immediately felt that something around them was amiss. He quickly spoke up, "Does everyone notice? It seems the air is heating up." When they first entered the underground imperial palace, everywhere was permeated with a bone-chilling cold. Yet after walking for a while, the surroundings suddenly became warm and terribly muggy. Fang Tin also noticed it, but as soon as he turned his head, he was completely stunned. "Your Highness, behind you. It seems there's light." Just as he said, behind them, a beam of light was slowly moving closer. For light to suddenly appear while they were in the dark underground was truly very strange. Could it be that someone was coming? As the light came closer, Xie Lian immediately discovered that the surrounding air heating up was not due to his imagination, but was precisely caused by this beam of light. Pure golden rock was still bubbling vigorous, emitting air bubbles and slowly flowing down towards them. It was precisely molten lava pouring down into the underground through the crevices. Xie Lian had a bad premonition, and suddenly felt someone run past behind him. He reached out and grabbed, "Wait! I want to ask for directions." That person immediately dodged to one side and stopped short. Everyone hurriedly turned their heads to look. Not far from there, the light from the lava flow clearly illuminated every corner of his face. Fang Tin roared, "Mu Qing! You bastard, stop. There was no way Mu Qing would stop. He did not say a word, lifted his feet, and ran like the wind. The three of them were about to give chase when suddenly, the ground shook violently, rumbling repeatedly. The lava flow, as if fueled by new impetus, flowed even faster, pouring straight towards them. The three were cornered with no foothold left. After all, this was not the first time Xie Lian had encountered such a situation, it was just that now it seemed a bit more difficult. He said, Fong Tin, on the surface of the lava, there are many hollow human-shaped shells they can float. Step on them, don't let yourself sink. Having said that, he gathered his strength and jumped onto a hollow shell that was still waving its hands about. Landing safely, Xie Lian finally breathed a sigh of relief. These hollow shells, when stepped on by him, only sank a little, and could still move on the surface of the lava. As long as they didn't move, they were indeed no different from a small boat. Fong Tin also jumped onto one, drew his bow, and aimed at its head. Swim carefully, don't you sink. The hollow shell, intimidated by his weapon, indeed dared not be careless and swam with all its might. Even though Hua Chong only crossed his arms and lowered his head to glare once, the hollow shell also instinctively dared not play tricks, and swam at full speed as if for its life. Xie Lian then clasped his hands, sincerely negotiating with it. Carry me for just a short stretch. Please carry me for just a little bit. Once we're out of this place, I will light incense for you. You don't want incense? Then tell me what you want. I will grant it all. The empty shell showed its displeasure, continuously reaching out a hand to grab him, wanting to fling him downwards. Yet Xie Lian was no different from buffalo hide candy. No matter how it was pulled, he refused to let go. Needless to say, the most difficult one to deal with was precisely the one he chose. The three people stood on the empty shell, moving along with the lava flow, looking as if they were surfing. The further down they went, the steeper it became, and their speed also gradually increased. Moreover, they had to dodge obstacles blocking their path. It was truly extremely dangerous. After a while, they finally caught up with Mu Qing. Feng Exine shouted loudly, Mu Qing, why are you running? Mu Qing, while stepping onto an empty shell, turned his head back and said, if I don't run, then should I wait for you all to come and hit me? Feng Exine held his bow but had run completely out of arrows, having no choice but to roar out loud, who would bother hitting you? First, you explain clearly. When we were in the armory, why did you suddenly disappear? Mu Qing scoffed coldly, you all. He had not yet finished speaking when Xie Lian saw the scene ahead. His pupils contracted, and he yelled, be careful, in front of you. Mu Qing immediately discovered upon turning his head that the path ahead seemed to be broken off for a section. This place must have previously had a chasm, and the height from here down to the bottom of the chasm was at least more than 100 zhang. He did not expect this thing to appear so suddenly. Coupled with the extremely fast speed of their descent, by the time he could react it was already too late. He was instantly flung downwards. Mu Qing and the empty shell beneath his feet instantly vanished, while the three people behind were also hurtling downwards, preparing to plunge into the chasm. In this dire situation, Ruyi immediately flew backward, coiling around the eaves of a palace, tying itself into a tight knot. Xie Lian, one hand grasping Ruyi, the other arm holding Hua Chong, did not forget to throw one end of the white silk towards Feng Exine and catch it. Using Ruyi as a tether, the three of them barely managed to steady themselves. The bottom of the deep chasm was merely 2 zhang away from them. It seemed as though a slight movement would cause them to fall instantly. One could say they had stopped just at the edge of the precipice. Behind them, the boiling lava still surged and flowed. Xie Lian immediately cried out, retract. Ruyi quickly shortened, pulling the three people towards the palace. Before long, they had safely set foot upon the eaves. This palace was quite large, so its eaves were also wide, and moreover, made of stone, unafraid of being eroded by lava. Being able to hold fast here, it seemed they could finally breathe a little sigh of relief. Regaining his composure, Feng Exine hurriedly looked down into the abyss, his eyes stunned, and said, Mu Qing, did he fall? Xie Lian reluctantly rubbed his fiercely pounding chest, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and panted, not yet. Looking down from the eaves, one could also see that right beside the edge of the chasm, a long dao was deeply embedded in the lava flow. A pair of hands clung tightly to the dao's hilt, unable to conceal the flushed face, teeth clenched, seemingly on the verge of exhaustion. Mu Qing hung suspended in the midst of the chasm, surrounded on all four sides by scorching lava that could burn skin and flesh. Sparks splattered before him if not for a layer of spiritual light protecting his body, blocking most of the heat. Perhaps by now his clothes and hair would have caught fire and burned to a crisp. However, that layer of spiritual light would also not hold up for long. If his entire body were to fall straight into the lava flow at the bottom of the chasm, then it was feared that not even his bones would remain. Indeed, anyone witnessing this scene could not help but tremble. Fong Tin said, "What should be done now? Your Highness, can your white silk sash reach his location?" Xie Lian then tried once, but not long after. He hastily retrieved Ruyi, extinguishing a few burning embers on the sash. "It won't do. The distance is too far. Ruyi might even catch fire halfway there." Mu Qing's clothes also burned off in several patches. The saber's hilt was heated until it steamed, yet he still clutched it fiercely, not daring to let go, nor daring to look down. Should he let go with even one hand, below was precisely the flowing molten lava awaiting him, along with countless wailing vengeful spirits, circling as if urging the dying soul above to quickly descend and befriend them. Mu Qing gritted his teeth and tightly gripped the saber's hilt, his pale forehead drenched in sweat. Seeing the three people standing in the distance, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, as if wanting to call for help. However, with his personality, words like "Is anyone there? Save me" or "Please save me" were truly very difficult to speak. In any case, even if Hua Chong were incredibly powerful, he would certainly not deign to save him. As for Fong Tin, it would be difficult to find a way to save him. Only a single ray of hope remained: the person who would be willing to come save him, who had enough ability to save him, and who could persuade the other two. That was Xie Lian. Finally, he struggled with all his might, veins bulging across his forehead, and shouted loudly towards Xie Lian, "Your Highness." Xie Lian immediately cast his eyes upon him. Mu Qing gritted his teeth, let out a sharp breath and lifted his flushed face. "Trust me. Your Highness, you know I wasn't lying. You know I didn't harm any of you." He clutched onto hope as he asked Xie Lian, as if clinging to the last life buoy, which made Xie Lian recall a fragment of memory. Many years ago, he himself had also held such hope when he asked Mu Qing, "You know I wasn't lying." At that time, how had Mu Qing responded to him? Hundreds of years had passed. He had never once thought about this matter. Yet after hearing Mu Qing's words, it was as if it was unearthed from the deepest recesses of his heart. Past events could not be mended. Countless images and words echoed within his mind. It was then that Xie Lian realized that he had, in fact, always remembered everything with such clarity. It turned out, he had never truly been able to forget. Mu Qing had not yet heard his reply, yet seeing that silent countenance, he seemed to recall the past as well, his expression changing in an instant. Perhaps, he too had realized that his earlier words should not have been spoken, that he should not have stirred up such unpleasant memories for Xie Lian at such a perilous juncture. "Watching Gent." Ly stepped up behind Xie Lian, his voice low. "Gage, before you make a decision, I wish to remind you of a few things." Xie Lian started, regaining his focus, and asked, "What things?" Hua Chong said, "Firstly, unless that lava stream ceases to flow, if you touch it now, it will undeniably be life-threatening. Yet, who could know when it would cease its flow?" The saber's hilt had already been heated until it glowed searing red. Mu Qing could not possibly endure much longer. How could they wait? Xie Lian remained silent, offering no reply. Hua Chong continued, "Secondly, if Mu Qing has indeed sided with Jun Wu, then Jun Wu will undoubtedly possess a means to rescue him from that predicament. As for you, Gage, if you were to descend, there is no guarantee you would return alive, and this possibility is exceedingly high. You should carefully consider his actions and words." He knocked out Fong Tin, led them into the armory, denied hitting Fong Tin only to be inadvertently exposed, then suddenly vanished when the weapons went berserk, and subsequently led them by the nose into the place where the lava flowed. Now, could he possibly be intentionally luring Xie Lian into a perilous dead end? Book 5 Chapter 234. Xie Lian thought for a long while. The sword hilt also heated until it was glowing red. Mu Qing could not help but cry out, forced to release one hand, tensing his remaining hand to cling to the sword hilt, his skin and flesh as if about to be steamed cooked. Even though the three people stood very far away, It seemed they could still faintly sense the smell of burning flesh. Hua Chang tilted his hand and released a silver butterfly. Hesitating for a moment, it immediately flapped its wings and flew away, yet it had only gone several truong away, not even one-third of the distance to Mu Qing's location, when it evaporated into a wisp of silver smoke, vanishing right in mid-air. Xie Lian knew clearly he wanted to prove to him that even his ghost butterfly could not help, that was a place of death, not worth him risking his life. Mu Qing watched the silver butterfly evaporate, leaving not a single trace. His complexion darkened, filled with despair. Now it was clear. Currently, 1. No one had enough strength to save him. 2. No one trusted him enough to save him. Based on what he had done, Xie Lian would certainly not risk his life to save a person like him. However, though he was utterly desperate, he himself was unwilling to accept it. Mu Qing bit his lip, yelling, "You don't believe me, fine. But I absolutely will not fall down so easily." Saying this, he exerted more strength to grasp the sword hilt tightly, intending to swing himself up. Who knew, just as he had lifted half his body, he suddenly slipped down again. Mu Qing hurriedly lowered his head to look. Reflected in his eyes were images of thousands of resentful spirits burned until blood flowed profusely, their skin and flesh festering, reaching out to clutch his legs tightly, pulling him downwards. These resentful spirits, originally submerged at the bottom of the lava, suddenly seeing a living person hanging right before their mouths, immediately became agitated, like fire being doused with oil. Meeting danger yet having no one to help, Mu Qing seemed to go mad, yelling loudly, "Get out!" Having lived in this world for several hundred years, it wasn't that he had never fallen into such a life-threatening situation. However, previous times were all due to injuries. This time it was because a crowd of resentful spirits wanted to drag him down into the lava to be burned to death. This way of dying was 1,000 times more terrifying than dying from injuries. Just imagining that he would evaporate like the ghost butterfly from earlier, leaving not a single trace of his body. His face turned deathly pale, drained of all color. Mu Qing's hand had struggled to its limit. His 10 fingers began to loosen, seemingly unable to hold on any longer. In just an instant, no one saw his hand clinging to the sword hilt anymore. It fell. A figure plunged straight down into the raging fiery lava stream. He cried out in panic, yet halfway through his fall, his body was caught, suspended in mid-air. Mu Qing had not yet understood what had happened. His scalp still prickled. He reflexively touched something at his waist, tied tightly around his body, preventing him from plummeting downwards. How could it be a strip of white silk? It was Rui. But Xie Lian was originally standing on the palace roof very far from him. Just now Rui also could not have reached this spot. How did it manage to tie itself around him? Mu Qing hurriedly looked upwards, suddenly discovering that Xie Lian was no longer on the palace roof. He was standing right by the edge of the abyss. Earlier, Mu Qing had fortunately managed to plunge the long saber into the rock flow, and by grasping the hilt, he had held on for a while. Now, Xie Lian also utilized it as a foothold, half kneeling on the saber's hilt. He hastily reeled in Rui while looking Mu Qing up and down and seeing him safe and sound. He let out a sigh of relief. "It's all right. It's all right. Luckily I made it in time." Mu Qing trembled and said, "Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince?" A moment ago it was truly utterly perilous, so much so that just thinking back his mind became dizzy. Such a far distance with molten rock all around, and no place to stand. Xie Lian at most could only jump to the middle of the river. How did he reach all the way here? Feng Xin's voice echoed from afar, "Your Highness, are you all right?" Mu Qing looked in his direction and saw that above the palace roof, only Hua Chang and Feng Xian remained. Hua Chang clenched his fist, gazing fixedly at Xie Lian, seemingly only wanting to ensure that he was safe. Everything else, he did not care about at all. Besides, in the middle of the lava current, a jet-black long sword was faintly visible, standing arm-ly and aloofly, despite the lava engulfing it all around. It was Feng Xian. So that's what happened. Mu Qing immediately understood how Xie Lian had jumped here. With Xie Lian's abilities, he could only jump at most to the middle of the river. There was no way to jump directly from the palace down to the edge of the abyss. Therefore he had used Feng Xian, commanding it to embed itself in the middle of the lava current, creating a foothold. Then he jumped again from Feng Xian onto his blade. and at that very moment of extreme peril, used Ruyi to grasp him. Xie Lian said just now I was preoccupied with thinking of hundreds of methods, but there was nothing usable here, so it took quite a bit of time. You were also too reckless. Next time, don't act so foolishly again. The more reckless you are, the faster you'll fall down. Mu Qing had thought Xie Lian was silent, hesitating whether he should save him or not. It turned out he was still busy thinking about how to save him. In such a critical situation, he could still calmly find a way. Sweat on his forehead poured even more. Xie Lian raised his head, stretched out his hand towards him, and smiled with crinkling eyes. Generally speaking, although it's a little slow, me offering my hand now still isn't considered too late, right? He didn't know if it was because Mu Qing had exerted all his strength to grasp the hilt of the blade just now, but both his hands seemed to become heavy, unable to lift. Xie Lian bent down lower. Stand up. Mu Qing finally managed to grasp his hand. Seeing Mu Qing's hand still trembling slightly, Xie Lian immediately exerted strength trying to pull him up. The two of them stood steadily together on the hilt of the blade. Xie Lian turned around, waving his hand. Sanlang, we succeeded. Hua Cheng said in a deep voice. Good. Gage, come back here immediately. Xie Lian replied, all right, I'm coming back right now. He turned his head to ask Mu Qing, can you jump? If not, let me carry you on my back. Mu Qing's lips twitched slightly. Xie Lian saw his expression, and said decisively, then I'll carry you on my back. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately grabbed him and piggybacked him. If it were before, Mu Qing would definitely glare at him, telling him not to grab people like that, as it was very disrespectful. But now he truly could not utter a word. Xie Lian prepared to gather momentum to jump across. Unexpectedly, at that very moment he slipped. For some unknown unlucky reason, the long blade embedded at the edge of the abyss, which had been firm all along, finally came loose at this exact moment. Hua Cheng's expression suddenly drained of color. Gidge. Now once again 2 figures were falling together towards the fiery red rock. Amidst this predicament, Xie Lian could still stir his mind to think it's fine. He spun his body in midair, recaught the long saber, and with both hands plunged it into the rock once more. With a clang, sparks shot forth, dazzling to the eyes. It was only thanks to the spiritual aura enveloping Xie Lian's body that these sparks shattered into dust and ash. However, once this spiritual aura were to vanish, it was feared his body would be riddled with holes. Ruyi immediately wrapped itself tightly around Mu Qing. Xie Lian spoke gravely, this saber cannot support 2 men at once. We cannot continue like this. Of the 2 of us, only one may remain here. Mu Qing's eyes widened. You mean? Xie Lian cut him off. You should no longer stand here. Mu Qing's pupils constricted. Before he could even open his mouth, Xie Lian had already seized him, throwing him forward with all his might, and shouted, aim for it. Mu Qing, flung by him over the chasm's edge, suddenly realized he was flying towards Feng Exan. He swiftly regained his composure, spun in midair, and landed lightly upon the sword's hilt. It was only then that he understood why Xie Lian had to throw him forward. It was precisely because at this distance, Xie Lian could directly leap from the saber's hilt to Feng Exan, yet Mu Qing could not. This distance was too great for him. He could only make the leap by relying on Xie Lian's throwing force. Feng Exan wiped away a bead of cold sweat. Excellent, Your Highness, hurry over here. Hua Cheng, maintaining the same expression, called out towards Xie Lian. Gidge. If you do not return now, I will descend directly to find you. Perceiving his cautionary tone, Xie Lian hastily replied, I'm coming back right away. The situation is still good, there are no difficulties at all. I can make the leap by myself, so please do not come down. Hua Cheng's expression subtly calmed, yet his gaze remained unmoving. Seeing him like this, Feng Exan could not help but voice. Truly unexpected. Hua Cheng did not turn his head, nor did he feel the slightest bit curious. What? Feng Exan scratched his head, saying, I had thought that you never particularly cared for Mu Qing, feeling he wasn't worth saving, and thus would surely object to His Highness not allowing him to go and rescue him. Hua Cheng shot him a glance, half wrong, half right. Huh. Hua Cheng replied, the former part of what you said is not incorrect. I truly do feel he is not worth saving. Whatever befalls him is of no concern to me. Looking at his composed expression, Feng Xen suddenly felt extremely flustered. You are too straightforward. Moreover, just think, what if in that person's heart, they also treated him with such an attitude? Who wouldn't be ashamed? Hua Chang chuckled softly, paused for a moment, then said, however, no matter what choice His Highness makes, only he has the right to decide. I will never ever object. From ancient times until now, Feng Xen had never heard such words. Men speaking to women didn't even say them, much less men speaking to men. Yet these words were only meant for Xie Lian to hear. He didn't know how to react, nor did he know what else to say. Ah, so that's how it is. Wasit. Ung turned his head, his gaze sweeping over the lava flow covering all sides. Then he intently looked at Xie Lian, smiling. Moreover, from the very beginning, I knew he would do that. On the other side, Xie Lian urgently said, Mu Qing, quickly jump onto the palace. Don't run away anymore. If there's anything, we can talk properly with each other later. Mu Qing suddenly realized with a start that if he didn't leave Feng Xen, Xie Lian would have no place to stand to jump. He focused his thoughts, preparing to exert his strength to jump onto the palace roof. Who would have thought? Just as he stood up, Xie Lian's voice echoed from behind, who's there? Xie Lian was standing on the hilt of the saber, calmly maintaining his balance when suddenly, from behind the layer of lava, a pair of hands appeared and firmly seized him, clearly reaching out from within the lava. Those hands were nonetheless terrifyingly cold. Xie Lian shivered, then heard Hua Cheng's frantic voice from above, His Highness. Those hands tightly embraced Xie Lian, pulling him from the hilt of the saber to fall straight into the abyss. Xie Lian was greatly astonished, hastily tilting his head to see what was seizing him. That person was entirely clad in white, wearing a mask, half crying, half smiling, joy and sorrow intertwined. It was Bai Wuxiang. Ruyi sensed the perilous situation and flew wildly about, shooting like an arrow before Mu Qing's eyes. He subconsciously reached out to grab it, yet the white silk ribbon was flying too quickly. He gripped it with all his strength, and inadvertently was also pulled down with it. Xie Lian was surrounded by lava on all sides, when he suddenly heard that thing lean into his ear and chuckle, ha ha ha. Naive. Too naive, Xianlu. Do you think you can ensure both sides are safe so easily? Below was a sea of raging, burning fire falling now. Perhaps not even a single bone would remain. Xie Lian raised his head, suddenly seeing amidst the dazzling flames, a figure in brilliant red robes appearing and disappearing intermittently, plummeting faster and faster. Hua Chang had also jumped down. But down below there was nothing but molten rock. Volume 5 Chapter 235. Xie Lian was completely engulfed in fear, and in the scorching lava. A moment later Xie Lian suddenly awoke. Just as he opened his eyes, he immediately discovered he was lying on the dry, hard ground, and there was Mu Qing sitting beside him, gazing at him blankly. Ta Lin's eyes suddenly reddened, and he immediately shot up San Lang. Seeing this, Mu Qing also hastily collected himself. Don't get agitated. Ta Lin unconsciously braced one hand on the ground, yet found no ground, almost losing his balance and rolling down below. He was startled, looking around. It turned out he was not lying on the ground, he was lying on a bridge. Taking in the whole view, this place was right below the cave. Above was the vast night sky, with only a single dilapidated bridge stretching across. The bridge was intact in some places and cracked in others, and was shrouded in an astonishingly deep black color, looking as if it was made of wood, yet also like it was made of stone. Perhaps it had endured thousands of years of falling rain and whipping winds, sunken amidst layers of dust and ash. It had no supporting pillars but hung suspended in midair by itself, its destination unseen, nor could one distinguish the direction. Some parts were as wide as 3 zhang, while others were so narrow that only one person could pass. Below the bridge was a swirling river of magma, akin to the Honggang Hell. Could it be the heaven-reaching bridge? In Ta Lin's mind, these 3 words immediately flashed. 2,000 years ago, Crown Prince Wu Rong, wanting to save all living beings from calamity, had built a bridge leading up to the heavenly court. Could this bridge be its very relic? He remembered that he was dragged down by Wuxiang, so why was he now lying on this bridge? Ta Lin hastily stood up, shouting loudly, San Lang. Mu Qing remained seated, saying, don't call anymore, he is not here. Ta Lin still scanned his eyes around. How did we get here? Was it someone who cast the shrinking 1,000 miles of land spell? Mu Qing replied, most likely so. I was falling into the river of magma, but had only fallen halfway when I was brought here. The most pitiful one was still Feng Xian. All three of them fell down, but only he himself was stuck amidst magma. On all four sides he would surely go crazy again, cursing wildly for all to see. However, the urgent matter now was to go find Hua Cheng, not knowing where he had been taken. Ta Lin saw Feng Xian and the long saber thrown to one side, so he walked over to pick them up and stepped towards Mu Qing. Mu Qing saw his face darken, and with the sword still in hand approach him, not knowing what he intended to do. A trace of fear suddenly welled up in his heart. Ta Lin then placed the long saber down, extending his hand towards him. Are you all right? If you're all right, stand up, let's go quickly. Mu Qing looked at the hand still persistently extended towards him, was silent for a moment, then gently shook his head. I cannot walk. My hands and feet are all injured. Ta Lin immediately sat down to take a look. Sure enough, both of Mu Qing's hands were reddened, and there were also patchy burn marks on his thighs. It seemed he could only slowly inch forward, one step at a time. He then said, "Then let me support you." He lifted Mu Qing's arm onto his shoulder, slowly helping him up, and in this manner they set off. After a few steps, Mu Qing suddenly spoke up. Why? Ta Lin continued to observe his surroundings. Why what? Mu Qing replied, I thought you would discover me, then know the things I have done and would surely suspect me. Xie Lian smiled. Oh, I don't. Why? Because I know. Know what? Xie Lian slowed his steps. I know you don't lie. Mu Qing's countenance was now difficult to describe with words. Xie Lian continued, don't you very much want me to trust you? I truly trust you very much. That's precisely it. How should I put it? Xie Lian tilted his head slightly. I have also known you for many years already. On this point alone I can affirm you are not that kind of person. Haven't I already said you can play dirty, spit into someone else's teacup? However, the act of stabbing in the back like this you absolutely will not do. Hearing the first half of the sentence, Mu Qing's countenance eased slightly, but upon hearing the latter half of the sentence, his face immediately darkened. This example is best forgotten. Don't mention it again. That spitting thing I cannot even bring myself to do. I truly have no interest. Xie Lian waved his hand, saying no need to mind these small details. Moreover, even if I were unlucky enough to fall into the worst-case scenario, being tricked by you, you also cannot defeat me in San Lang. We would only need to unleash a palm strike to strike you dead immediately. How could it be easy to be threatened? Ha ha ha. Mu Qing muttered, you're doing it on purpose, aren't you? Do you want to make me die of anger or what? Cough cough, just teasing you a bit. In short, Xie Lian no longer smiled, holding his hand, his gaze directed towards the end of the pitch-black bridge. If you truly did not agree to commit evil, and were punished by Junwu with a Kang curse, which is why this trouble was caused, I have. And more cannot argue with you, he calmly said, because you did the right thing. Mu Qing looked at him blankly, finally clenching his teeth and saying, Xie Lian, you truly are. Xie Lian immediately interrupted, stop, spare it. As if I don't already know what you think of me. Now you still have to rely on me to support you as you walk. Say one more word and I'll throw you down there. Mu Qing snorted, I don't understand what I was thinking to go and seek help from you. Xie Lian said, it's all the same. I saved you also only because I adhered to my own principles. Speaking of this matter, although you always strive to excel in all aspects, however, in the past there was a period of time when I truly very much wanted to beat you to death. It's a pity that at that time I wasn't strong enough and later I no longer had interest. Now that I have the opportunity to beat you, I, however, do not have enough reasons. All the wrongdoings you committed are not to the extent of deserving death. So if you can be saved, then naturally I must save you. Mu Qing sighed, then burst into a few laughs. After a moment of silence he said, Your Highness, in truth Just at this moment, the ground beneath their feet suddenly collapsed. Mu Qing was injured and could not react in time. Fortunately, Xie Lian was always nimble, immediately gathering momentum and flying forward like an arrow shot. Turning his head back to look, the bridge had suddenly broken off a piece. The place where they had J.U.S.T. stood had already collapsed, leaving not a trace. Crash. A section of bridge, pitch black, submerged amidst a river of fiery red lava. The resentful spirits immediately reached out their hands to cling on, scrambling to climb up, hoping to escape this endless torment. Yet, there were too many of them, and that broken section of bridge alone could not lift them up. As expected, after only a moment they sank to the bottom. The two people sitting on the bridge, a fleeting shiver of fear in their hearts, unconsciously glanced at each other. Xie Lian said, "It seems this bridge isn't too sturdy." Mu Qing's face was deathly pale, wanting only to run back. The spot where they had stood just now was very wide, seemingly incredibly stable, yet it still collapsed, unintentionally cutting off their path of retreat, forcing them to only go forward. Yet the path ahead was very narrow, looking like a trap, dangerous on all sides, unsure where one might step and fall. Xie Lian said no more, hurriedly carried Mu Qing onto his back. "We cannot stand in one spot for too long, otherwise, who knows, it might collapse again. Hold on tight, we must go faster." Having said that, Xie Lian immediately took a running start. The further they advanced, the narrower the bridge surface became, making it difficult to breathe. The widest part was only as wide as a doorway, while the narrowest part was only as wide as a person's waist. Facing this situation, Xie Lian, however, coped with great ease. Without a scratch, he merely touched his feet to gain momentum, looking like a swallow gracefully gliding over autumn waters. If it were any other martial god in his position, they would surely stand still, not daring to budge, because there was simply no second person who could do as he did. Without using any spiritual power, this was the result of countless days of physical training, finally achieving such exquisite agility as now. Suddenly, a pillar of fire shot straight up from nowhere, blocking Xie Lian's path directly ahead. If he hadn't reacted quickly, dodging in time, he would likely have plunged right into the pillar of fire, incinerated into ash. The two looked down. Unbeknownst to them, thousands upon thousands of resentful spirits had gathered in one spot, reaching their hands towards them, screams and laughter piercing the ears. That pillar of fire was also emitted by them working together. Both felt a splitting headache. Mu Qing reluctantly asked, "What are they saying?" Xie Lian murmured, "Come down here, come down with us, we will all shatter together, all die together in this place." Mu Qing looked at him in fear. "You understand them? It seems they are speaking the Wuyong language." Xie Lian nodded. "These people are those who, when the bridge to heaven collapsed, fell from the bridge into the molten lava, burned to death. Moreover, no one came to save them, so they wanted to drag everything down with them. Indeed, this is the bridge to heaven." Mu Qing said, "If they drag people down, will they be able to escape?" Xie Lian replied, "No. No matter how many people they drag down, they cannot escape. The resentful spirits here can never be freed. They simply like to see others suffer like them. It is precisely because of this that they can never escape their fate, forever tormented in the lava." Mu Qing was suspicious. "How do you know so many things?" Xie Lian sighed. "I'm not sure either, but perhaps he intentionally told me." Just as before, he had transmitted memories to those corpse rats. The resentful spirits, seeing that they hadn't yet fallen, became dissatisfied, secretly gathered together, wanting to emit another pillar of fire. As Xie Lian lifted his foot to run, the pillar of fire also surged forth, slamming violently against the bridge surface. Unable to keep running while enduring blows, Xie Lian immediately leaned and sent a palm strike downwards. Yet he had little spiritual power left, and that palm strike did not reach its target. Mu Qing had more spiritual power, striking a little further than he did, yet still not reaching the target. Several times the pillars of fire burned at their heels, and the resentful spirits laughed gleefully, pointing excitedly, watching them run for their lives as if it were a comedy performance. Yet they could do nothing to them, feeling extremely annoyed, their hands clenched, knuckles cracking. Mu Qing gritted his teeth, panting a few times as if struggling to make a decision. His voice was hoarse. "Stop it, Crown Prince. Xie Lian, quickly put me down." Xie Lian continued to pick up speed. "What are you talking about? How can a life-cherishing, death-fearing person like you say such things?" Mu Qing's forehead throbbed with veins. "I cherish my life and fear death, which is indeed shameful. But sooner or later I will die. While I still haven't regretted it, quickly let me go." Xie Lian replied, "Don't be noisy, you'll only distract me. Right now, what's more important is to quickly reach the end of the bridge." Mu Tin lost all patience. "Are you mad? If this truly is the heaven-reaching bridge, only heaven knows when you'll have to keep running. Sooner or later they will strike you. Let me down, I will slay all these vengeful spirits. Meanwhile you should seize the chance to escape." Having said that, he patted Ta Lin's shoulder and slid off his back. Ta Lin hastily turned his head. He had just lifted one foot when Mu Tin cut him off. Don't come here. This place is very narrow. If you come any closer then both of us will fall. Ta Lin still resolutely advanced. Mu Tin let out a huff. You are not wrong. We are truly alike. You see that I always strive in every aspect, and I see that you also strive no less. He looked into Ta Lin's eyes now. I'll tell you frankly. All this time, I have always been jealous of you. Ta Lin was startled. Well, actually I've known for a long time. Mu Tin coldly interrupted him. Yes, but do you know I have always felt you merely relied on your birthright because you are His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. You always have good luck, and actually your skills aren't anything special, not even much stronger than mine. I also feel that you like doing good deeds simply to be praised and glorified by others. Even you helped me for that reason alone because I am merely a tool for you to express your pity and your nobility. Honestly, these thoughts even now I still cannot change. Never can they be changed. Even if I try to suppress them for a moment, they will still surface on their own. Ta Lin didn't know whether to appear embarrassed, or what such words shouldn't be blurted out right in front of people. Unexpectedly, for his next line, Mu Tin said, however, there are many times I find myself greatly admiring you. Ta Lin was momentarily surprised. Mu Tin spoke hesitantly, as if his throat were being choked. The words coming out of his mouth were truly stiff. It's true, truly are very formidable. Compared to me, you are much more formidable. Truly I really want to become free friend of yours. Ta Lin had never dared to imagine, not 1,000 times nor 10,000, that one day he could hear these words from Mu Tin's mouth. Although he spoke falteringly and stammeringly, unwillingly, and without a trace of emotion, yet they were words from the bottom of his heart, and after all, they were still human words. His eyes widened to their utmost. Mu Tin gritted his teeth, and let out a breath when Xie Lian kingdom was annihilated. Regardless of the right or wrong then, regardless of the difficulties I faced then, I still sincerely owe you an apology. Ta Lin was speechless. What's past is past, let's consider it done. Now let's quickly leave this place. Mu Tin spoke up again. He told me that if I were truly very suspicious, even if in your heart you knew I wasn't lying, you would never come to save me, because you would never trust me. Ta Lin immediately understood who he was referring to here. Mu Tin continued, although I did not agree to help him, however, his words did make me think a little. I know you have always hated me, so I still assumed you truly never intended to save me. Another pillar of fire shot up high. Ta Lin immediately retreated a few steps, moving even further from Mu Tin. Mu Tin's expression darkened. Filled with extreme fury, he suddenly raised a hand and struck a palm onto the bridge's surface. Ta Lin's pupils contracted. What are you doing? Unsurprisingly, the bridge segment promptly gave way, plunging Mu Tin straight downwards. Mu Tin, suspended in midair, turned his head back and cried out, helping you clear away the obstacles. Upon seeing the bridge segment fall, the vengeful spirits within the lava rejoiced, surging forward madly, ready to seize him. Little did they expect to be swept aside by a single palm strike, shattered into countless fragments. Mu Tin stood upon the shattered bridge segment, the radiant aura enveloping his body shining with dazzling brilliance. He sneered, you lot cowering down here spitting a few sparks seem rather pleased with yourselves, don't you? Now that I've come all the way down, don't even dream of escaping. Though so grievously wounded, he could still slaughter all these vengeful spirits. Mu Tin unleashed his palm. His spiritual power stained a bloody crimson. He frantically cut down the vengeful spirits, slaying them so completely that countless piercing screams echoed from all directions. Witnessing his robe slowly begin to ignite, Xie Lian, lying prone on the bridge surface, cried out, Mu Tin, can you jump high? Mu Tin snapped, what gibberish are you spouting? Why haven't you left yet? Xie Lian calmly replied, are you jesting? In this entire life you've only managed to utter a few coherent words with such great difficulty, and now without even a moment, you've already fallen down there. How could I bear to abandon you and flee? Mu Tin grew even more furious. What managed to speak a few coherent words with great difficulty. Before his words could cease, the ground beneath his feet suddenly gave way by several inches. The complexions of both of them abruptly turned ashen. At this rate he would plummet into the lava, vaporized without a single bone fragment left. Only moments before, Mu Tin had been overflowing with vigor, Yet now his face was stark white, devoid of all blood. He clenched his fists, shutting his eyes tightly, preferring that before being burned alive, he would rather strike himself with a palm to die, perhaps ensuring a slightly less agonizing demise. Xie Lian hastily intervened. Hold on. Don't be impulsive. I have a way. Mu Tin immediately opened his eyes. What way? Though Rui could not stretch too far, it could still reach halfway. Xie Lian promptly flung it downwards. Jump up with all your might. Catch hold of it and it'll pull you up. Mu Tin's face grew even paler. If I could jump, I would have already carried myself away. Would I still need you to concoct an escape plan? Xie Lian truly wanted to strike himself. Just a moment. Persevere a little longer. I will absolutely come up with a solution. What solution do you have? Tell me. Where is the solution? Where is the solution? Think of a solution quickly. There was no solution whatsoever. Both fell silent, steeped in despair. Mu Tin unwittingly raised his hand. To his surprise, at that very moment, someone's hand clasped firmly onto his. That person seized Mu Tin, gathered strength, and sprang high into the air. Xie Lian felt the white silk suddenly pulled taut. Immediately looked down, both joyful and fearful. Feng Xian. The section of bridge where Mu Qing had just stood had sunk to the bottom of the lava, and at the end of the white silk band, Feng Xian, one hand gripping Rui tightly, the other holding Mu Qing, shouted loudly upwards. Your Highness, quickly. Pull us up. On the surface of the lava, there were several human-shaped empty shells swimming past. Apparently it was thanks to them that Feng Xian was able to get here. Xie Lian didn't have time to ask much, found a spacious spot and pulled them up. The two of them were gradually lifted onto the bridge. However, below, the vengeful spirits had gathered into a crowd, resentfully muttering amongst themselves for a while, then immediately shot a column of fire towards them. Feng Xian and Mu Qing were suspended in mid-air, having no way to dodge. Xie Lian then pulled Rui, running a few steps across, fortunately helping them dodge. However, the bridge's surface offered only one spot wide enough, so after dodging past, they had to run back to the original spot. Feng Xian was almost incinerated by the column of fire, angrily shouted, You pile of dog shit down there, seeing people in trouble you immediately take advantage and play dirty? I'll FCK your whole family. Xie Lian said their entire family all have such forms. Do you truly want to FCK them? They still stubbornly refused to give up, laughed maniacally, preparing to attack again. Feng Xian could no longer contain his anger, immediately flung Mu Qing upwards. Catch. Mu Qing, who had been drawn to his death several times, his spirit still unsettled, his actions somewhat sluggish, seeing him speak thus, immediately obeyed unconditionally, grasping the white silk band. Feng Xian reached one hand behind his back, pulled out Hai's longbow along with a few branches he had picked up on the way. He used one hand to draw the bow, his teeth clenched tightly on the bowstring and the arrow's nock, aimed his eyes for a moment, then decisively shot them out. Thwip thwip. 4 arrows shot out in one instant. The arrows pierced into the lava, instantly exploding and terrifying the vengeful spirits, who immediately scattered and fled. Feng Xian, having vented his fury, shouted with a triumphant air, See? I said it, I did it. Damn it, such petty dog shit tricks. This master can still shoot you dead with one hand. Finally, the 3 people were able to stand steadily on the heaven-reaching bridge. Xie Lian raised a hand to wipe away the layer of sweat. His heart still pounded relentlessly. Feng Xian, how did you get here? Feng Xian then clutched his head. How did I get here? All 3 of you jumped down. What other choice did I have? Damn it, I almost went mad. I had no choice but to circle around that chasm. After walking a distance, I arrived here, heard faint human voices echoing, and it turned out to be you. As soon as I entered, I saw you all competitively diving down into the lava. Are you all crazy? Mu Qing regained a bit of composure. I was pulled down. After hearing Feng Xian scold for a while, Xie Lian sighed. All right, calm down first. Be that as it may, you truly are a savior descended from the heavens. You've helped us a great deal. This goes to show sometimes one must be pulled once by another to be able to survive. That's truly how it is. The 3 people were all scared nearly to death, their faces ashen. They panted for a while before gradually recovering their composure. They dared not stay long. Feng Xian carried Mu Qing on his back, continuing to run on the heaven-reaching bridge. After walking a distance, they also discussed some matters. Xie Lian heard Feng Xian say that Hua Cheng was nowhere to be seen, and in his heart, he couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Where exactly was Hua Cheng? They could only simultaneously follow the path the bridge led and search. At this moment, Feng Xian then spoke to Mu Qing. Alright, just now you said a few words and I heard a bit. Listening to the initial part, I truly wanted to rush in and give you a beating, however, unexpectedly afterwards, you brat, you could say such words. Mu Qing's complexion suddenly turned grim. Feng Xian turned to Xie Lian, saying, I told you long ago. As for him, his thoughts are even more winding and convoluted. Much more complicated than those of concubines in the deep palace, truly something to behold. Xie Lian, seeing Mu Qing's abnormal complexion, then shook his head, waving his hands dismissively. Feng Xian yet innocently missed the hint, continued speaking to Mu Qing, if you want to be friends with your highness, just say it directly. Yet you stubbornly insist that your highness looks down on you, not daring to approach and be friends yourself, and even resenting him. Besides, I truly don't understand what you're thinking in your head. Xie Lian waved his hand. Hasn't he been like this since childhood? You don't need to say anymore, his face is all red now. Uh-oh. Mu Qing could no longer hold back, yelling loudly, what the hell? It truly is absolute nonsense. Can the two of you shut your mouths? Xie Lian clicked his tongue, reminding him, you're starting to resemble Feng Xian. Swearing is not good, you know. Feng Xian pouted. You yourself said you really wanted to be equal friends with his highness. He even intentionally mimicked Mu Qing's way of gritting his teeth and stammering. Seeing Mu Qing angry, his hand already silently on the hilt of his saber, Feng Xian immediately changed his attitude. All right. I'll speak plainly now. Remember this, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has never once thought ill of you in his heart, except for that time when you went too far and drove him away from his cultivation place. From that time onwards, he has never once spoken ill of you in front of me. As for you, from now on behave a little normally, speak normally, express yourself normally. If you act crazy or out of your mind, I will scold you. Mu Qing heard the first half of the sentence, only silently lowering his head hearing the whole sentence. He immediately widened his eyes. Haven't you been scolding me for hundreds of years already? Xie Lian clicked his tongue again. Mu Qing, you are a heavenly official, you must pay attention to your image. You cannot casually open your mouth and widen your eyes like that. If your believers saw you, it would be awful. Mu Qing sneered. Oh, come on. This person, doesn't he just sit in the upper heavens and curse all day long anyway? Feng Xian also snorted. It's because of you that I curse. Mu Qing said, you like to bring up old matters to make things difficult for me, but didn't you also abandon His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and go off to have a child? Feng Xin's forehead pulsed with green veins. He rolled up his sleeves and said, you like to pick a fight, don't you? Mu Qing sneered again. You started the fight first. If you hadn't constantly been by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's side, speaking ill of me, would I have felt that he despised me? Seeing the focus of the conversation starting to shift in another direction, Xie Lian immediately spoke up. In this situation, you don't need to dig up each other's dark histories like this, do you? Hurting each other serves no purpose. Mu Qing glanced over, speaking louder. Furthermore, that time when he was going to go robbing, you didn't understand anything, yet you showed a bewildered and surprised expression. If I were His Highness, in one night I could even steal all the family fortunes of 18 wealthy landlords, finishing it all in the blink of an eye. Yet you didn't understand the situation, and even trailed after him asking what had happened. Xie Lian blushed, hastily turning his head back. Hey, you don't need to bring up mine too. In short, we need to find Sanlang now first. Just help me find Sanlang already. Ah. These two young masters, whenever they are placed next to each other, they invariably quarrel without end. Book 5 Chapter 236. Hearing the name, it already sounds appealing, doesn't it? Just at this moment, the three of them simultaneously felt a tremor transmit from below, and together cried out, be careful. Their feet immediately sped up. 7 or 8 pillars of fire shot upwards. Looking down, even more lava wraiths were gathering below. Xie Lian said, Feng Xian, hand Mu Qing to me. Feng Xian, without a second word, threw Mu Qing from his back to him. Xie Lian carried him up. Mu Qing said, quickly kill them, they're annoying to death. Feng Xian said, you don't need to say so much. He pulled back his bow and shot arrows in quick succession. This weapon of his had a much better attack range compared to Xie Lian and Feng Xian fighting blindly together, shooting the crowd below scattering high, continuously screaming piercingly. Xie Lian said, "That's a beautiful hit." Mu Qing on his back said, "It's still acceptable." The resentful spirits, endlessly resentful, discussed for a moment, then swam further forward, joining forces to spew fire. With several booming sounds, Xie Lian cried out, "The bridge section ahead has been burned and broken by them. They want to cut off our path." Feng Xian cursed, "Damn them, holding hands in Cooper. Aiding like this, why don't you do something productive instead of harming people? I think even after another 800 years, you shouldn't even think about escaping this lava." He drew his bow, and those lava resentful spirits scattered again. Xie Lian said, "Don't curse anymore, prepare. We have to jump. 1, 2, 3. First, they maintained accelerating 4 second, they calculated the number of steps. Third, with powerful legs they took momentum, then jumped. 3 silhouettes flew up to the sky, glided past the gap of the broken bridge, landed on the opposite side and continued running like mad. That bridge was originally used for connecting heaven, so its slope naturally rose gradually, but the more Xie Lian ran, the lighter his body became like a swallow, and he said, "The three of us haven't been like this for a long time, have we?" Mu Qing said, "Are you talking about fighting shoulder to shoulder together? Or running for our lives like mad together like this?" Xie Lian said, "Both." Feng Xian, "It's clearly still frequently like that." Xie Lian, "Is that so? It's just that, there are many issues when spoken explicitly and not spoken explicitly, the feelings are completely not the same." Xie Lian chuckled a few times, his eyes always observing everywhere, yet he still hadn't seen the silhouette of the red robe, and he could not help but feel slightly anxious, calling out, "San Lang." The sound of his call echoed circling within the empty lava cave. No one answered. Xie Lian licked his dry, cracked lips. Mu Qing from behind him saw him looking east and west, then was silent for a moment and said, "Your Highness, do you truly like him that much?" "Oh." Xie Lian could not have guessed he would suddenly ask such a thing. Huh? Although his expression was bewildered, his ears slowly reddened. Mu Qing saw this appearance of his, was speechless, hesitated for a moment, then said, "It's not that I intentionally want to scare you, but I still must remind you, have you considered? Perhaps only the two of us were pulled onto the bridge, but Crimson Rain sought flower. Was not, then what?" Feng Xian said, "Isn't what you asked meaningless? If this place only has the two of you, then naturally he must have been transferred to another place." As he spoke to hear, he then realized what Mu Qing meant. He was not trying to say Hua Cheng was transferred to another place but was saying, perhaps, Hua Cheng had fallen into the lava lake. Xie Lian licked his lips. "This, how can it be?" Mu Qing said, "Don't assume it's impossible. Crimson Rain sought flower is a calamity ghost king, but Bai Wuxiang is also the same. Moreover, he is the first-generation calamity ghost king, the master of Mount Tonglu. This place is his territory. It is his strongest home ground for spiritual power." Feng Xian glared angrily at Mu Qing, scolding silence immediately. "Are you ill? At such a moment, can you not utter words a little more pleasant? He is none other than the Crimson Rain sought flower." Mu Qing indeed spoke no more, but clarified a little. "I only feel that, no matter what, we ought to consider this unfortunate situation a little, to see what must be done." Before Xie Lian's eyes appeared a fresh, dazzling red, unusually so within Hua Cheng's pale palm, not knowing what to say. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly halted his steps. Feng Xian behind almost bumped into him, asking, "What is it?" No sooner had the words left his lips, than he discovered there was no longer any need to ask, only to see ahead myriad tiny points, flickering with silver light, surged through the air, as if someone in the heavens had overturned a treasure box brimming with silver powder. Xie Lian released Mu Qing, walking forward. He raised a hand to probe, lightly touching that rather large shard of silver light in the air there. Having touched it, he then held it in his hand, slowly raising it before his eyes. The two other people also came forward to look. Feng Xian said, This is..." Mu Qing spoke directly. "A small fragment of a purple spirit butterfly?" Perhaps bothered by his overly direct words, Feng Xian glared angrily at him. Xie Lian's hand trembled slightly, holding that remnant butterfly wing that emitted a faint silver light, and he sighed. Feng Xian scratched his head, saying, thinking positively, At the very least he did not truly fall into the lava lake. Surely he must have arrived here, right? Mu Qingpui. Ted to one side saying, and after that fought a battle with someone here. A very great battle. Xie Lian looked in the direction he pointed, slightly widening his eyes, only to see, spread across the rocks in every direction, countless saber and sword marks, frightful to behold. Those were the saber marks of Yiming. The saber cuts were deep, reaching to the bone. It was not as though Xie Lian had never before seen Hua Cheng wield a saber, yet Hua Cheng's style had always been light and at ease, without a trace of concern. To say he was using a weapon would be less accurate than to say he was playfully toying with a small saber. But these saber marks, however, brimmed with killing intent. It was clear just how formidable his opponent had been, and how perilous this battle had proven to be. He said not a word but lay prostrate, peering closely. On the bridge's surface, there were no traces of a fall, nor did resentful spirits gather in cheers beneath. Only then did a faint sense of ease wash over him, and he scrambled back onto the bridge, dashing straight ahead. Fong Xian behind carried Mu Qing on his back, chasing after, calling, "Your Highness." Xie Lian held his breath, for he did not wish to hear his own overly rushed, utterly unrestrained breathing. Chaotic breathing for a martial god was the greatest taboo. It not only added a burden to the body but also disturbed the inner self. Yet holding his breath was useless. His hands and feet were trembling, and as he ran stylily and frantically, he stumbled, falling headlong and rolling for dozens of turns, nearly tumbling off the bridge. Both Fong Xian and Mu Qing cried out, strictly urging him to be careful. Suddenly Xie Lian said, "What sound is that?" Xie Lian stopped his steps once more, turning his head to say, "Do you hear it? Is there truly a sound?" Fong Xian and Mu Qing both said yes. Yes, it was the clang of weapons and the crash of spiritual powers. Even the body of the Tongtian bridge seemed to tremble. Along the path in the darkness ahead, light flashed, then vanished. Someone is fighting ahead. Xie Lian, with a headlong tumble, surged forward and dashed away. Fong Xian muttered from behind, "My God, if all the gods in the sky are blessing that, it must be Crimson Rain-sought flower, otherwise, he would probably go crazy." Mu Qing stopped talking nonsense. Even we ourselves cannot be protected by all the gods in the sky. Quickly chase after him. Look at his swaying, stumbling appearance. Don't let him fall flat on his face like a dog eating shit before he even sees anyone. Xie Lian completely forgot the need to hold his breath, just kept hearing his own chaotic panting as he ran 5 or 6 miles, turning past several very large bends. Finally, after turning past one last bend, his vision suddenly brightened like snow. At the end of the Tongtian bridge, hanging in midair, a red-robed figure and a white-robed figure were fighting fiercely. That red-robed person held a bright white, slender, long scimitar in his hand, his figure ghost-like, appearing and disappearing in flashes like lightning. It was indeed Hua Cheng. He did not smile, extremely focused, his expression was cold to the bone. On his pale, handsome cheek, a streak of fresh red blood was smeared, adding 3 parts of dazzling beauty to the bone-chilling coldness. That white-robed one was naturally Bai Wuxiang, holding a long sword from who knows where in his hand. On his face was still the mask of sorrow and joy, half crying and half smiling. However, that mask and the one Xie Lian had witnessed before were not too similar. Right in its middle it was cracked. That crack was very big, immediately noticeable. From the middle of the forehead, it cracked past the eye down to the cheek, seeming as if it was about to break completely. The body movements of the two collided and then separated, demonic energy reaching the sky. The attacking force like 1,000 armies, power piercing through the high heavens. Sword energy and blade wind, wildly flying and chaotically dancing. The group of purple spirit butterflies above were also contending with the swarm of magma vengeful spirits below, continuously howling, like moving mountains and filling the seas. Every close encounter, the flames burning in the magma lake all exploded into several waves several zhang high. Others were completely unable to approach. Fong Xian and Mu Qing, who had followed and arrived, were both so shocked by this scene. At their feet were pinned in place, unable to move a step. There was not a single martial god who could see such a battle scene and not feel their passionate blood boil. As soon as he saw Hua Cheng safe and sound, Xie Lian's heart, which had been hanging high, finally dropped to the ground. He truly wanted to immediately roll on the ground and shout loudly, but he still forcefully held it back. When masters duel, just a trace of disturbance in an instant could determine victory or defeat, let alone. This was a battle between two contemporary supreme ghost kings. Standing very far behind Bai Wuxiang was a figure, it was the national preceptor. He was naturally brought here by Bai Wuxiang. Seeing Xie Lian's group arrive, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief, but also did not dare to casually speak up. Unexpectedly, Hua Chang had already long noticed the newcomers. His concentrated, frostily cold expression slightly dissipated, and he finally parted his lips in a smile, saying, "It seems you have failed again. Your Highness has arrived. The people he brought, not a single one is missing." Xie Lian couldn't help himself and shouted, "San Lang." Hua Chang slightly nodded, replied, "Gidge," and after replying, his tone again shifted to a warning, "Gidge, next time you let yourself fall, I will be angry." Xie Lian also said, "Next time you jump down after me, I will be even angrier." Oh! Hearing that, Hua Chang's expression stiffened a bit. It seemed what Xie Lian said truly made Hai am a bit wary. Yet when he faced Bai Wuxiang directly, he did not reveal this wary expression at all. Bai Wuxiang lightly flew up, striking straight towards Hua Chang. But his words were spoken to Xie Lian. "Xianlu, are you two perhaps too pleased with yourselves, truly no longer putting me in your eyes?" The eye on the hilt of the Yiming scimitar saw Xie Lian, and lightning fast, it spun around freely. Hua Chang turned his hand, and Xie Lian heard a clang sound, his heart unsettled. Volume 5 Chapter 237. That was the sound of a weapon breaking into pieces. Everyone hastily observed based on the sound, only to see that the scimitar in Hua Chang's hand was still safe and sound, but the long sword Bai Wuxiang originally held had been struck by Hua Chang with a backhand slash, breaking completely into two pieces. The eye on the hilt of the Yiming scimitar again looked towards Xie Lian, frantically spinning without stop, as if it was extremely proudly showing off, exultantly joyful enough to brightly illuminate heaven and earth. Hua Chang chuckled and slowly said, "It's nothing. Gidge does not need to worry." He then turned to ask Bai Wuxiang, "Why should I put you in my eyes?" Bai Wuxiang snorted coldly. The state preceptor feared him provoking his opponent, and could not help but cry out, "Young man, your words should not be too presumptuous." Who would have thought? Hua Chang's next sentence was even more unbridled. With one hand he held his saber chi surged, and he pointed at Bai Wuxiang's face, smiling. "To speak frankly, you are merely a decrepit old man, narrow-minded, your head riddled with thoughts of envy and resentment." Not only did the state preceptor no longer have the strength to mock his clearly fake smile, but even Feng Xian and Mu Qing were utterly stunned. This man is audacious beyond measure. In this world, who dares stand before Jun Wu, or before Bai Wuxiang, and speak such words? Yet, they could not but admit, only Hua Chang dared to speak thus. Because no matter how presumptuously he spoke, neither Jun Wu nor Bai Wuxiang could do anything to him. Mu Qing personally climbed down from Feng Xin's back, walked a few steps and muttered to himself. No wonder in the past, whenever encountering blood rain-seeking flower, Jun Wu always instructed me to avoid him if possible, not to confront him. At that very moment, a wisp of white smoke appeared, blocking the blade of Yiming that was swinging forth. Xie Lian was perceptive, and instantly noticed upon a glance, "San Lang, do not strike that thing. It's the fetal spirit." He saw clearly, and Hua Chang naturally also saw clearly. He shifted the tip of his saber aside, with utmost fluidity, changing his chop into a sweep, batting away that wisp of white smoke. Feng Xian blinked, his pupils constricted. Seeing that the fetal spirit had not been chopped into many pieces by the saber, only then did he recover his wits and roared, "Get back here now." The direct tie in the fetal spirit was batted away by Hua Chang was precisely where Feng Xian ran to. He approached, wanting to seize it by the scruff of its neck. On the fetal spirit's head there were only a few sparse strands of hair. When he roared once, it immediately went berserk, its throat growling, ferociously biting wildly, absolutely refusing to let him seize it. Feng Xian could not help himself, and angrily cursed, "Damn it all! You cling to him, but you bite me. Who is your father then?" Mu Qing suddenly sneered, "Did you ever consider it your son? Did you ever call its name?" Hearing this, Feng Xian was utterly dumbfounded. Over there, Xie Lian could no longer stand by and watch. He hurriedly instructed, all of you be careful, I'll go up there to take a look. Mu Qing spoke softly, you be careful too. Don't forget you still have 2 cursed shackles on you. Xie Lian was worried, and unconsciously touched his hand to his neck, touching that cursed shackle. However, he felt that Bai Wuxiang would not exploit the cursed shackles to threaten him. Without time for more words, he ran straight ahead. Seeing on the other side the red and white figures fighting viciously, after observing for a moment, he judged that at this point it would be difficult to casually join the chaotic battle. Rui then swung up, grabbing the state preceptor and pulling him over. Master, are you still all right? The national master wiped a head full of cold sweat, replied. Nothing. Xie Lian was puzzled. If nothing is wrong, why is your sweat like bathing? The national master scolded, isn't it because that brat, Hui Vu Tam Hoa, scared me to death? At this moment, he again heard Feng Xian and Mu Qing cry out in alarm. Xie Lian turned his head to look back, only to see Bai Wuxiang already a little stunned. One of his arms was already injured. He wearily reached out a hand, glanced at the profusely bleeding wound, and let out a long laugh. It has been many years, no one has been able to injure me to this extent. Xie Lian felt that something was amiss. Master, is he angry? The national master could be considered the person who understood Bai Wuxiang the most in the world. No. Compared to him being angry, this is even more disastrous. He is elated. After a pause, Bai Wuxiang looked towards Hua Cheng, and with great interest asked, that curved saber of yours, was it forged using that blind eye? Hua Cheng was clearly uninterested in responding, but Xie Lian's heart suddenly gave a lurch. From the first time he saw Yiming, he had already ascertained this curved saber was certainly not normal. He also had already guessed to 60% that Yiming was perhaps forged from that lost eye of Hua Cheng. Bai Wuxiang's tone, however, was extremely certain. Could it be that it was truly so? The national master's eyebrows furrowed for a moment, then he suddenly exclaimed, I remember now. Xie Lian said, remember what? The national master replied, I remember. I once heard among mortals speak of an event. More than several hundred years ago, there was once a fierce ghost that entered deep into Mount Tonglu. Mu Qing said, fierce ghosts that have entered Mount Tonglu before. There must be at least more than 10,000 of them, surely. The national master scolded, if you don't know, then lean on a pillar and listen. That fierce ghost became a ghost in a very short time, and was extremely young, and by then later was about to dissipate into smoke and dust, but for some unknown reason, still persistently drifted to this place. For some unknown reason, Xie Lian's heart pounded wildly, and he said, about to dissipate into smoke and dust? Why? The national master said it seemed it suffered severe injuries, its soul and spirit dissipated to 7 or 8/10, its consciousness was hazy, but it still kept wandering and muttering, he will not leave, he will not leave. Perhaps it was because of some heartfelt wish that had not been fulfilled. In short, one year Mount Tonglu opened, and an unexpected event occurred. Xie Lian heard the phrase, he will not leave, and his heart inexplicably softened, filled with incredible sorrow. He immediately asked, what unexpected event? Inside Mount Tonglu, not only were there 10,000 ghosts gathered, but there was also a group of living people, who mistakenly rushed into the forbidden ground. Huh! The national master said, in Mount Tonglu, all were demons, devils, ghosts, and monsters ordinary. People had utterly no way to escape, and the outcome could only be to become their food. However, that fierce ghost, for reasons unknown, in a frantic rush, carried off that group of living people, and fled for many days. To his dismay, he was still surrounded by myriad ghosts, pushed to a dead end. Afterwards, he and the group of living people were captured step by step. Xie Lian knew. This solitary wandering fierce ghost was none other than Hua Cheng. His heart was ablaze. What happened next? Is there any way for him to escape? The imperial preceptor said, there is a way. Forge a blood artifact, and slay his way out of the encirclement. Mu Qing still couldn't help but interject. Forging a blood artifact must definitely use a sacrificial offering. Then wouldn't that be precisely that group of living people who entered the forbidden area? Feng Xian and Mu Qing watched intently, observing Hua Cheng fiercely battling against Bai Wuxiang. Could it be he? Xie Lian also held his breath. The Imperial Preceptor nodded again. Yes. He made his move. The expressions of Feng Xian and Mu Qing were beyond words. Xie Lian, however, did not move, merely waiting for the Imperial Preceptor to continue. Sure enough, the Imperial Preceptor spoke up again just as he intended to act. Halfway through, he suddenly went mad and gouged out one of his own eyes. The Imperial Preceptor said that fierce ghost almost sacrificed all the living people with blood, but for some unknown reason, he still couldn't bring himself to do it. Instead, he used his own eye as a sacrificial offering and forged a blood artifact. But this fierce ghost had only a flicker of life left. Gouging out his own eye should have rendered him unable to hold on, completely shattering into pieces. But it's unclear what provoked him, making him, on the contrary, exceptionally clear-headed. It's unknown what kind of evil artifact he ultimately forged to be able to overcome that battle. Finally, there's still one very peculiar thing. Xie Lian reluctantly calmed his mind. What? What matter? The Imperial Preceptor said it is said that, after overcoming the battle, from the sky suddenly descended a heavenly tribulation, striking Mount Tonglu. Do you understand what this means? Is there still a need to ask what it means? A heavenly tribulation descending means heaven believes that within Mount Tonglu, there is someone worthy enough to ascend and become a god. Xie Lian seized the Imperial Preceptor's hand. Who is it? Who ascended? The Imperial Preceptor said all these things are merely what I have heard. However, the upper heavenly court also has no heavenly official originating from Mount Tonglu, or what I have heard is simply fictional, but it could also precisely be that person, as soon as they ascended, immediately leaped down themselves, rejecting the heavenly realm. Mu Qing could not believe it, and said in horror, using a ghost bod. Why can also ascend to become a god? Such a thing actually exists? Moreover, he even refused to ascend and jumped down himself. Afterwards, he entered Tonglu Mountain, overcame 100 trials to become a supreme. He really just jumped down like that. To become a supreme, does he fundamentally not care about life or death? What exactly does he want? Why did he manage to go to such an extent? Suddenly, Xie Lian heard Bai Wuxiang sigh. Xianlu, you have an extremely loyal devotee. Before the words were finished, a half-crying, half-smiling, cracked mask slowly appeared, right before Xie Lian's eyes. Xie Lian completely did not expect Bai Wuxiang could in an instant transform and appear before him, his eyes clearly reflecting the figure of him. Rui bristled and jumped up, intending to attack, yet still recoiled into a ball. It couldn't be blamed. Rui was inherently extremely intelligent. When it judged that any kind of attack would be useless, it would definitely actively give up. Bai Wuxiang seemed to smile, because that half-happy, half-sad mask grew even more fractured. In an instant, the blade of Yiming had slashed across his neck. But it was still a step slow. Bai Wuxiang had evaded. He suddenly appeared at the highest point of the ruined Tongtian Bridge, and helplessly shrugged. No need to worry, I am just taking back what is mine. In his hand, he was holding an entirely black long sword, flawless as ice and jade, a sharp streak of light flashing on eye. TS blade. Xie Lian unconsciously reached his hand behind his back, and sure enough, the Fangxin sword had vanished without a trace. Fangxin was originally the personal sword of Crown Prince Wuyong. Bai Wuxiang had snatched away the personal sword that once belonged to him. 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces. The pale white mask peeled off bit by bit, piece by piece, finally completely shattering, revealing the face behind it. The white robes, submerged in burning flames, in a blink of an eye also transformed into a dazzling white armored body. Finally, Bai Wuxiang took off the mask, becoming Jun Wu. Everyone held their breath vigilantly. It was obvious without needing to guess, this form of his was definitely stronger. The Imperial Preceptor shouted loudly towards Huachang, young man. Do not be careless. This form of his is even harder to deal with than Bai Wuxiang. Moreover, previously he had no weapon, so you gained an advantage, but now that is over. Sure enough, the wounds on Jun Wu's body all completely disappeared, and from head to toe, he became completely resplendent. He cast his gaze upon Kwok Su, smiling right in front of me. You dared again to teach others how to deal with me. Is it because you saw that I did not kill you that your audacity grew bigger and bigger? Although he smiled, it clearly revealed a warning stance. Kwok Su also did not speak many words, only stood there looking at him. Xie Lian said, you can rest assured, Xie Lian never underestimate. As the enemy, he already understood very well. Even if Hua Chang always mocked and respected no one, his hand did not loosen its grip on the saber's hilt for a single second. Junwu gazed at the long sword in his hand, calmly saying, "True Xian, long time no see." Fang Xian, or more accurately True Xian, held tightly in his hand, immediately radiated monstrous evil energy. Previously, Xie Lian had always felt that Fang Xian was an ancient sword. The older it was, the harder to use, and it could even break at any unforeseen moment. Yet he did not expect this sword, in the hands of its old master and in his hands, to be so different. True Xian and Yiming collided, causing the entire heaven-connecting bridge to shake violently, seeming as though it could collapse, sinking into lava at any moment. Compared to a moment ago, Junwu's power and speed had clearly increased to a terrifying degree. Although Hua Chang was not at a disadvantage, his eyebrows still furrowed, his expression darkened, making people tremble in fear. The few people standing afar watching the battle also could not help but be terrified, because every single sword strike Junwu sent down directly aimed at Hua Chang's right eye. Hua Chang managed to block both times, the danger hanging by a thread. He quickly realized that Junwu, time and again, only used the exact same move, as if he already knew his weakness was the right eye, and a single strike piercing it would be enough. Every time Junwu struck, Hua Chang had to use all his strength to defend, only then could he block all attacks. If that were the case, weren't they falling into a stalemate that would lead nowhere? The eye on Yiming's saber hilt, as if sensing the imminent danger, suddenly became more frenzied than ever. The black jade sword once again struck forth. A sharp clang sound rang out. Hua Chang had not yet raised his saber to block the attack, yet Junwu had gently withdrawn his sword. Xie Lian, clad all in white, stood directly in front of Hua Chang, blocking. Just now it was he who had unleashed a palm strike, deflecting True Xin's chilling sword path. As expected, Xie Lian still could not restrain himself and immediately jumped into the battle. He originally possessed the skill to use his bare hands to defeat all kinds of weapons, but this was the first time he had fought against such a powerful sword, and had exerted himself to deflect it. Now his entire arm was tingling numb. He rubbed his hand, retreated a few steps, and only then gradually regained his composure. Hua Chang stood behind him, saying in surprise, "Brother?" Xie Lian gently nodded together. The two of them stood shoulder to shoulder, with resolute gazes fixed straight towards the other side. Upon seeing this, the smile on Junwu's face became even more distinct. "Oh?" Xie Lian said in a low voice, "You above, I below." Before the words had even finished, they immediately moved from their positions. One stood above, one stood below, heading towards Jie Unwu, preparing to meet the battle. Xie Lian had already understood very well every trick and stratagem in Junwu's mind, vaguely predicted his next move, and immediately shouted, "Hook!" Hua Chang heard this and instantly swung his saber, striking forth. As expected, Junwu almost fell for the move. Xie Lian again shouted loudly, "Blast!" Amidst explosive bombardments, they used spiritual power to swiftly slash at each other. Hua Chang still dutifully followed his words this time. He did not use his saber but directly channeled magic to strike with his hands. That strike hit Junwu's shoulder squarely, making his entire body sink down. If he were not so incredibly nimble, perhaps he would have been injured to the point of paralyzing both his arms. After fighting back and forth for a while, Xie Lian suddenly realized with a start. Hua Chang was a peerless ghost king. With unparalleled prowess, what need was there for him to devise a few small schemes like these? Feeling he had been too presumptuous, his old habit relapsed, and he hurriedly waved his hand. "My apologies. You don't need to listen to me." Hua Chang smiled with his eyes narrowed. "Every word Gich says is the best. Why would I not need to listen?" Suddenly, the bridge surface beneath Hua Chang's feet cracked and shattered. Seeing him about to fall downwards, Xie Lian hurriedly threw out Rui, pulling him back up. In just an instant he felt a chill down the back of his neck. Junwu had already lunged behind him without him realizing, one hand gripping his shoulder tightly. "Xian Lu, your prowess is not bad." He pressed too close too quickly, to the point where the hairs on Xie Lian's body stood on end. Hua Chang cried out in alarm, "Gich!" He swung his left hand, and Ming immediately shot out like lightning. Xie Lian reacted very quickly. hurriedly lowering his head to dodge. Ming brushed past the top of his head, slashing straight towards Junwu. Seeing this, he lightly released his hand from Xie Lian's shoulder, and Xie Lian also took this opportunity to run back to Hua Cheng's side. Ming circled around for a while before obediently returning to Hua Cheng's hand. The two of them coordinated so seamlessly that from the outside looking in, one could only see three figures flickering like lightning bolts, unimaginably fast. Yet, Junwu's laughter still incessantly echoed throughout the space, as if encouraging them. Excellent. Good. Keep going. Mu Qing reluctantly dodged away from the cracked section of the bridge, and said fearfully, Imperial Preceptor. What's wrong with him? Is he laughing? The Imperial Preceptor sighed. I have already warned you all. The more heavily he is injured, the more exhilarated he becomes. Just now was only the beginning. On the other side, Junwu, gripping true Xian in his hand, was like a tiger growing wings. Xie Lian saw him incessantly swinging his sword, aiming at Hua Cheng's right eye. A trace of fear arose in his heart, and so by reflex he threw out Ruyi to tightly wrap around Tru Xin's hilt. Unexpectedly, Junwu turned his hand and pulled once, and Xie Lian's entire body immediately flew towards him. Xie Lian was slightly startled, but in just 1 second he had composed himself. On the contrary, he even wanted to seize his sword, dashing forward without a trace of fear. In his mind, tens of thousands of possible scenarios replayed, and over 200 moves were prepared to deal with it. Little did he expect, while suspended in midair, suddenly a hand grasped him tightly, pulling him backwards. As soon as Xie Lian fell to the ground, he hurriedly looked up, only to see Hua Cheng blocking in front of him. A gleaming black sword tip pierced through his heart. Witnessing this scene, Xie Lian seemed unable to breathe. San Lang. Hua Cheng's expression darkened slightly. Junwu was originally waiting for Xie Lian to stab himself with true Xian, but to be intercepted midway, he slightly disappointed retracted his sword. Xie Lian inadvertently forgot that Hua Cheng was a ghost. Even if a large hole was gouged in his chest, he could still happily laugh and talk. Yet, he could not help but worry. Even though the wound did not bleed at all, he still used both hands to press it tightly. San Lang, why did you suddenly do that? Hua Cheng smiled. You tell me. How could I watch you get stabbed right in front of me? For some reason his tone was a little excited. Xie Lian was slightly stunned, then heard Junwu's gentle vo. Ice resonate by his ear. Xian Lu, why must you be so pained? He doesn't feel any pain either. After all, he's just a corpse that died long ago. He even deliberately brought this up. Xie Lian stared fixedly at him. A furious rage flared in his heart. Isn't it all your fault? Junwu gave a cold laugh. Is all of it my fault? Upon hearing his question, Xie Lian's throat suddenly constricted. Junwu's tone remained unchanged. Let us assume it is so. However, Xian Lu, have you been banished to the mortal realm for too long, that you have forgotten the things you did in the past? Do you still remember what calamity you yourself caused after the collapse of the Xianlu kingdom? Junwu's expression gradually revealed a smile, and he slowly said, do you still remember what became of the one who called himself the Nameless Ghost? Suddenly, Xie Lian's face turned ashen, and he blurted out, stop. The National Master, feeling uneasy, spoke up. Your Highness, what is he saying? What did you do after the Xianlu kingdom collapsed? Xie Lian's fearful gaze flitted from Hua Cheng to Junwu. Just a moment ago, he had been filled with immense fury, yet now he was utterly helpless, not knowing what to do. Hua Cheng immediately clasped his hand, his voice deep. It's all right, Your Highness, do not be afraid. Feng Exen also nodded yes. Calm yourself first. Mu Qing, however, was consumed by impatience. What does he mean? Ghost? What ghost? How could Xie Lian possibly answer such a thing? The T was the darkest period of his life, and the time he committed the most regrettable deeds he himself did not even dare to recall. The mere thought of a pale mask smiling radiantly would cause him to toss and turn sleeplessly, wishing only to shrink away and hide from reality. Hua Cheng had witnessed Xie Lian in boundless glory, Xie Lian as an invincible warrior, Xie Lian as a foolish, clumsy youth, and Xie Lian in utter destitution. None of it mattered. Yet he had never witnessed Xie Lian wallowing in the dirt, Xie Lian cursing at others with venomous words, a Xie Lian brimming with boundless resentment and a fierce desire for revenge, intent on obliterating the entire Yong'an kingdom. even wishing to unleash the human face disease a second time. All those memories were horrifying simply to recall. In times past, if Bai Wuxiang delighted in spreading tales, Xie Lian would not have cared in the slightest, yet now Xie Lian truly could not bear to imagine what Hua Cheng's expression would become after hearing all that he had done, because he was fundamentally not the good person Hua Cheng believed him to be. Neither was he a lofty sacred deity, untainted by even a single speck of dust. Once Hua Cheng learned all these shameful truths, Xie Lian feared he would appear utterly incredulous, and perhaps Xie Lian would no longer have the courage to face Hua Cheng. At this thought, Xie Lian's face immediately turned an ashen green. A layer of cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and his hands trembled uncontrollably. Witnessing his profound fear, Hua Cheng clasped his hand even more tightly, declaring with unwavering conviction, "Your Highness, do not be afraid. Do you remember? Boundless glory is you, and falling into mortal dust is also you. What truly matters is you, not how you are. No matter what transpires, I shall not depart. You may tell me anything at all." He turned his gentle gaze upon Xie Lian. "I wish for you yourself to tell me." At last, Xie Lian managed to regain a measure of his composure. Junwu let out a soft laugh, slowly saying, "No matter what happens, I shall not depart." Once, the most loyal of believers, the dearest of friends, had also spoken those very words to me. The national master's countenance subtly shifted. Junwu cast a fleeting glance at him, then continued, "But just look." In the end, not a single one truly managed to do so. The national master could not bear to meet his gaze, and gently turned his face away. Hua Cheng's voice deepened. "Your Highness, trust me." "Is that not possible?" It wasn't that Lian didn't trust. It was just that he didn't want to try. Finally, Lian swallowed, forced a smile, yet felt that the matter was truly not worth smiling about at all. He lowered his head, his voice trembling. "Senlang, I'm sorry. Cannot." Hua Cheng looked at him silently. Actually, before he finished speaking, a fierce murderous intent shot forth. The two of them immediately dodged. "Awa." "Why?" Lian quickly regained his composure, his complexion also improving a little. "What's wrong with him? Why is he getting even more faster, stronger?" Compared to the form of Bai Wuxiang just now, at present both Junwu's speed and strength have increased by at least twofold. Moreover, they are still ceaselessly growing. Every strike he unleashed clearly displayed that terrifying power. Mu Qing sensed something amiss and immediately cried out loudly, "Your Highness! He's changed his plan. He's no longer attacking Crimson Rainsought Flower, but has switched to attacking you." Lian also noticed this fact. In his hand was only Ruyi, and Ruyi, upon seeing Feng Xian, immediately recoiled backwards, utterly incapable of fighting back. Fortunately, Yiming, swift as lightning, immediately shot forth, directly intercepting a blow that was striking towards him. The heart-piercing sword carried an overwhelming momentum, making one's skin crawl even when viewed from afar, let alone Lian himself, who was confronting its onslaught, forced to continuously retreat. Confronting a Bai Wuxiang, Hua Cheng alone could cope with practiced ease. But after Bai Wuxiang transformed into Junwu, it required two people to be evenly matched against him. The advantage in spiritual power on Mount Tongla's home ground finally gradually became apparent. Lian vaguely felt an oppressive force suppressing their side. Moreover, Junwu still had a layer of white protective armor. That 1,000-year-old magical artifact was personally forged by him. Its defense seemed to have no openings, and wearing it into battle, he only needed to protect his own head. Hua Cheng wielded his scimitar whistling like the wind, fast, precise, and ruthless, while Lian also utilized everything. The two of them had confronted him head-on several times, successively striking at Junwu's throat, heart, back, abdomen, shoulders, but their opponent remained unyielding. Mu Qing cried out, "Don't waste your strength. It's useless. That white armor is simply impenetrable." Lian said, "Strike below his right ribs." The crescent scimitar struck again, hitting precisely where he had said, and indeed it was useless. Mu Qing shook his head. "I told you it was useless. Why don't we first think of a way to widen the distance? We will join you and fight him together." "Feng Xian, where are your bow and arrows?" Feng Xian climbed onto a rocky outcrop, grabbed the embryo spirit that was furiously spitting at him, and hearing that, said, "Here. Let's go." Lian cried out again, "Don't hesitate, keep going. Strike below his right ribs." Fong Tin yelled, "Your Highness, that armor is very formidable, even hundreds of slashes might not be able to break through it." "Xie Lian, just listen to me. It won't take hundreds of slashes." Hua Chang had absolutely no doubts, his curved saber seamlessly performing a continuous flurry of attacks. Suddenly, where the blade sliced through, a gash appeared. Fresh blood splashed forth in a line. The blade of Yiming slashed straight into Junwu's lower right abdomen. Hua Chang faced Junwu directly, holding the saber in one hand, his dark, calm gaze fixed upon him. Xie Lian, meanwhile, stood beside Junwu, and Rui seized the opportunity to surge forward, tightly binding his hands, rendering him unable to strike back or defend himself. On the other side, Mu Qing exclaimed in surprise, "How could this be? How could that 1,000-year-old white armor be so easily torn open by Hua Chang?" Xie Lian gripped Rui tightly, staring intently at Junwu and said, "Have you forgotten? More than 800 years ago, you and I once fought a battle." Fong Tin and Mu Qing reacted promptly. The second ascension? At that time, Xie Lian made a request, asking Junwu to banish him, and simultaneously wished to contend in a match against Junwu. Although both sides had promised not to hold back during that battle, Junwu had surely held back many unused techniques. As for Xie Lian, he had given his all from beginning to end. In total, he had delivered more than 3,000 sword strikes. Among them, more than 400 had pierced Junwu. And among these more than 400 sword strikes, 100 had pierced that very spot. Xie Lian persevered, continuously trying more than 3,000 sword strikes against Junwu, and finally managed to break through that 1,000-year-old white armor, whose defense had no flaws, with a single sword strike. To his lower right abdomen. It was precisely the spot where Hua Chang's saber was now slashing down. Therefore, 800 years ago, Xie Lian had left behind an existing flaw on the white armor. With just 3 more slashes, Hua Chang would certainly be able to break it open. What's more, compared to what Xie Lian had imagined, Hua Chang's use of the saber was far more ruthless. That curved saber slashing into the abdomen was absolutely a fatal blow. He had just exhaled a ragged breath when he suddenly heard the state preceptor cry out, "Useless." Logically, Junwu, heavily wounded, should have had his movements restricted, yet he merely lowered his head and glanced, his expression remaining as calm as ever. Xie Lian had just felt a slight unease when Junwu's hands had subtly stirred. Instantly he heard 2 very faint tearing sounds, "fut-fut," and simultaneously his grip loosened. It had been severed. His strip of white silk snapped into 2 sections, falling limply. In less than a second, his neck was suddenly seized, and his whole body was dragged away roughly. He heard Hua Chang cry out, "Your Highness." Only, that voice had suddenly become very distant. Junwu's voice, on the contrary, was very close. He said, "Xianlu, do you truly think that in matters of being stabbed by a blade, my experience would be less than yours? Look into my eyes and see if I care." The imperial preceptor from afar called out, "Even if you stab him around 108 times, it will still be useless. He is as if he completely no longer knows what pain is." Xie Lian could be pierced through the heart by a long sword without his expression changing. Junwu likewise. Feng Xian, who was originally drawing his bow aimed at Junwu, hearing this, let his hand fall. "What? Then wouldn't it be useless whether we fight or not?" Mu Qing said incidentally, "Let me tell you a very bad piece of news I observed. I suspect his self-recovery speed is even faster than the frequency at which he is injured." "What?" On the other side, Xie Lian could also confirm, this matter was precisely the truth. Junwu's injuries were so terrifying. Had it been anyone else, they would certainly have been cut into 2 halves, but his wounds had stopped bleeding in an instant. Junwu said, "Why be so surprised? If you were often stabbed in the back by people, if you couldn't recover faster, wouldn't you have long since died hundreds of thousands of times? However, you two are not bad either." He smiled and said, "For over 800 years now, I have only been injured by 1 blade and 1 sword, and it was precisely by you two." Crimson Rain Sought Flower, step back a little. You will not want to see Xian's appearance as I wring his neck. Hua Chang's expression was heavy. In the depths of his cruel eyes surged raging anger, but seeing Junwu grasping Xie Lian, suspended on the Tongtian bridge, as long as he let go, Xie Lian would fall 100 ja into a sea of fire. For a moment he endured, releasing his hand from the hilt of his scimitar, slowly retreating a few steps. Outwardly, Hua Chang was still temporarily composed, but the scimitar beneath his hand had completely exposed his emotions. Yiming was extremely anxious, its eye darting wildly, its gaze fixed on Xie Lian with anxious longing. Only when Hua Chang retreated to the edge of the Tongtian bridge did Junwu then say all right. He held Xie Lian in his hand. The two glared at each other. Junwu seized Xie Lian and suddenly flung his body straight into the rock wall. This impact was too brutal. Xie Lian's entire head buzzed with dizziness, his mouth and nose full of fresh blood trickling down. From afar, it seemed many people cried out in alarm, but he couldn't clearly make out who was who. He only heard Junwu leaning into his ear, speaking faintly. "Xianlu, your head hit the wall, does it hurt?" Xie Lian could not hear clearly. His mouth remained silently pressed tightly shut. Therefore Junwu again seized him, flung him one more time and asked, "Does it hurt? Does it hurt? Does it hurt?" After finishing one question, he would fling Xie Lian into the wall once so forcefully that he had to cry out loudly, but what he cried out was, "Sanlang, do not come over here. It's nothing. I'm fine. Absolutely must not come over here. At least now is not the time. The opportune moment has not yet arrived." The very first time Talian was struck, Hua Chang immediate. Ili rushed forward. Yet, before he could take 2 steps, he heard him cry out thus, and he patiently stood still. However, his countenance had become grim. Blue veins protruded ferociously on the back of his hand, as if about to explode, his entire arm clenching tightly and trembling. Junwu's face remained calm and unchanged, but his arm wildly grasped Talian, continuously flinging him against the rocky wall, repeating it with urgent haste. "Does it hurt? Does it hurt?" Kwok Su exclaimed in fright. "Crown Prince, His Highness!" Not knowing whom he was ultimately calling, Talian, drenched in blood, propped his 2 hands against the jagged rocky wall, gritting his teeth and shouting, "It hurts!" Only then did Junwu smile with satisfaction, releasing Talian's pitiful head, and with a swing of his arm, flung him onto the ground. Talian collapsed, hands clutching his head, which hummed from the beating, tears of fresh blood uncontrollably pouring down. Junwu squatted beside him, his gaze fixed intently on his face, then aimlessly turned away to look for a while. Suddenly he raised his hand to stroke his head, then gently helped him wipe away the fresh blood on his face. This movement was gentle and benevolent, as if like a father, squatting beside his son whose face was bruised purple from his own assault, then gently comforting him. Feng Xian and Mu Qing, seeing this scene, could not help but shudder. Has he gone mad? Hua Chang gripped the hilt of his saber, the bones of his hand clenching tightly and crackling, while Yiming's pupils rapidly contracted, streaks of blood in the whites of his eyes instantly spreading. Talian absolutely did not utter a single groan, letting Junwu help him wipe. Junwu then gently said, "You foolish child, if it hurts, you must say so. Why don't you turn back? Do you think if you hit a wall, the wall will collapse for you? Why don't you change your direction?" Talian said, "I won't turn back." Junwu instantly swung up a palm strike, and with a thud struck him, sending him face first onto the ground. Talian's head was spinning, and he was again lifted up by Junwu. He spoke with a pressing, impatient tone. "Must you absolutely provoke my anger? I ask you again, will you change or not change?" Talian coughed twice, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "I want change." Junwu's gentle expression finally tore apart, and a ferocious look appeared. Kwok Su's face turned green like a banana leaf, seeing the situation was not good. He hastily cried out, "Crown Prince, His Highness! Since ancient times you never wanted to kill this child, you liked him very much. You said so yourself, have you forgotten?" Junwu gave a cold laugh. "If not for that, I wouldn't have used all my patience and forgiveness on him for the past 800 years. He would have long ago become the foundation of Xianjing, trodden upon by tens of thousands of people." He again flared up in anger, suddenly turned his gaze to Xie Lian, "But he is such an ungrateful person, stubborn, willful. No matter what, he will not listen to my words. He definitely must oppose me. You do not change, truly? Well then you just try and see if your head can break through this wall or not." Guesher saw him again lift Xie Lian up, hastily cried out, "Crown Prince, Your Highness! Crown Prince, Your Highness! Your Highness! Little Your Highness, he doesn't understand things. You forgive him this time, just forget about it. One day he will definitely understand. Junwoo looked at him for a moment, his smile growing colder and colder. You think I'm truly mad? You're mocking me, aren't you? Honestly, in your heart, you think the one who doesn't understand things isn't him but is me, right? Guesher was utterly dumbfounded. Junwoo again said, you wholeheartedly cultivate him, educate him, simply hoping he can defeat me, like that is enough to prove I am wrong and you are right. All of you are already right. You can already embrace a perfect illusion of Crown Prince Wu Yong appearing, and wring your wrists and sigh for the current Junwoo. Isn't that your objective? You think I don't know what you think? Guesher shook his head. It's not. You don't get trapped forever in matters of right or wrong, success or failure like that. I have never had such a thought. However, Junwoo fundamentally could not listen anymore. Sternly shouted. Nonsense. I tell all of you, nonsense. No one can defeat me. Person like him even less so. He mania. Callie laughed a few times, again grabbed Xie Lian and threw him straight into the rock wall, while throwing repeatedly while shouting, will you change or not change? Change or not change? Change or not change? Xie Lian also seemed as if driven mad by him, grabbed hold of his arm and screamed out, not changing, not changing, not changing. Although he was thrown until stars burst in his eyes, the pain intensely boundless, but even if pressed to death, he also would not give Junwoo the answer that he desired. I am not changing, you see, what can you do? Truly it was utterly satisfying. He had repressed too long. As if after so many years he had finally also waited for this day. On one side his head dropped and blood flowed, on the other side again crying loudly and screaming greatly. I just won't change. Even in pain I want change, even in death I want change, forever won't change. Now it was not Junwoo who made him explode in anger, but he who made Junwoo explode in madness. Junwoo's two eyes were blood red. He was about to again give him a lesson, when his movement unexpectedly slowed down. He lowered his head and looked again. He only saw one long saber had struck onto his shoulder, 8 tree branches replacing long arrows, also already neatly and tidily plunged in behind his back. This was not considered anything, because both the long saber and the long arrows could not penetrate the white armor. But his right hand had disappeared. It was the very hand the T was grabbing Xie Lian had disappeared. Completely from the wrist onwards it disappeared, only a clean sharp cut remained. Xie Lian likewise disappeared from sight. He again turned his head, immediately received a gust of wind rushing straight into his face. His left hand swung up, caught that object, and immediately discovered that was precisely his own right hand. On the other side of the Tongtian bridge, Hua Chang was already holding Xie Lian covered in blood, one hand holding the scimitar, gripping his shoulder, the other hand covered the wound on his head, and darkly and gloomily said, that filthy hand of yours, take it back. Xie Lian, even in death, would not admit defeat. Ultimately enraged Junwoo, making him leave an opening. Junwoo grabbed his right hand, reattached it to himself, swung it twice, pulling out all the arrows behind his back. Suddenly he was reminded of something. He turned his head and glanced fleetingly, just happened to see a hand holding a long saber, and Mu Qing with an ashen face holding the long saber standing behind his back. As Mu Qing directly faced that gaze, he was slightly alarmed, but still persisted, forcibly calming himself. Not long after, he could no longer maintain his composure. Quan No glanced at his shoulder a little, blandly said, indeed, compared to Xian Lu, you are still a little more inferior. Hearing this, Mu Qing's face paled. The long saber in his hand suddenly dropped. His expression immediately became terrified. He pulled up his sleeve cuff to observe. He saw only the cursed manacle on his wrist suddenly tighten. Meridians on all sides bulged. Fresh blood seemed to ceaselessly churn, gushing into the manacle. Feng Xian saw Mu Qing dazed and motionless. He shouted, what are you still standing there dazed for? Run quickly. The Imperial Preceptor couldn't help but say, this little brat Feng Xian. His thigh is injured, how can he run? Feng Xian was startled. Damn it. He had completely forgotten about this. If it were in the past, Mu Qing would most likely have been provoked to the point of rolling his eyes. But now, even if he ran, it would only be a waste of effort. The cursed manacle still clung to his hand. No matter how far he ran, it would be useless. After uttering a curse, Feng Xian wanted to run over to help. Unexpectedly, after Quan No pulled out all the arrows from his back, In one swift motion, he flung them towards him. Feng Xian only felt his chest grow ice cold. Lowering his head to look, he saw the 8 arrows he had shot with a bow. All of them had been returned, neatly plunged straight into his chest. Quan No slowly walked towards Huacheng and Xie Lian. Huacheng didn't even look at him, only kept embracing Xie Lian, calling Gidge. Gidge. Xie Lian had just been thoroughly battered, and only much later did he groggily wake up. His head was still aching intensely, and he couldn't even open his eyes. San Lang? Are you all right? Huacheng looked at him for a moment, then suddenly pulled him forcefully into his embrace, tenderly saying, I'm all right. Why don't you look at yourself? Xie Lian nestled in his embrace. Even though he was held very tightly, his wounds were not touched at all. He struggled to open his eyes. The surrounding scenery swayed indistinctly. Mu Qing stood rooted in place as if frozen, tightly clutching his wrist, seemingly struggling to fight against the blood-draining manacle, but judging by his pallid face, he was clearly about to reach his limit. Although Feng Xian was not pierced through by those 8 arrows, he was still considered severely injured, collapsing heavily onto the bridge. That fetal spirit, moreover, was overjoyed, ceaselessly cackling maniacally, bouncing around and flying around him, and even used its small feet to furiously trample his face. Feng Xian was enraged, but no matter how hard he tried, he dared not move, otherwise his injuries would certainly worsen. And the entire enormous Tongtian bridge, segment by segment, was collapsing. They could potentially fall down with it at any moment. Xie Lian clearly saw the current situation. Startled, he wanted to stand up, and Huacheng helped him up. Both of them simultaneously looked opposite. Quan No's figure slowly walked towards them, seeming unusually tall and grand amidst the blazing fires all around, cast as an enormous silhouette. Xie Lian forcefully wiped the fresh blood flowing from the corners of his eyes, the corners of his mouth, and both nostrils. Staring fixedly at that figure without looking away. Quan No angled his hand and grasped Zhu Xian. The blade of Zhu Xian, spiritual light condensed, circulating without end. At this moment, Quan No slowly approached with calmness, as if the one who had just wildly flung Xie Lian into that rock wall was not him. Xianlu, you yourself know very well you have completely lost. Quan No understood Xie Lian very well. As for his fighting methods, he knew every detail even more clearly. Just the spiritual power alone was already utterly crushing him. Moreover, even though they had not yet engaged in battle now, Xie Lian could also sense that Quan No's fighting intent and spiritual power were both stronger than him. Mount Tonglu was his territory, and the suppression on him was even more evident. Xie Lian thought to himself, perhaps he was not wrong. He truly could not win. But even if he could not win, he must still fight. Huacheng, however, suddenly spoke. No, Your Highness, you can win. Xie Lian was slightly startled and looked towards him. Huacheng also gazed intently into his eyes. You can win. You are stronger than him. His gaze was bright as if burning, and he said with certainty, trust me. He is wrong, you are right. You are stronger than him. Compared to him, you are far more formidable. Junwu let out a low laugh, perhaps feeling Huacheng was too naive and ridiculous, or perhaps deriving pleasure from the power he held in the palm of his hand. The power of tens of millions of believers, all in his hands alone. Huacheng then placed a hand on his shoulder. So what? They are merely tens of millions of foolish people. All of them are wastes. But for you, just one person is enough. One person is enough? Before Xie Lian could even react, Huacheng had pulled him closer. Xie Lian's eyes widened. Spiritual power erupted, surging and penetrating deep within. This time, the spiritual power Xie Lian received was even more formidable than all previous times. Even the violet spirit butterflies and the swarm of magma resentful spirits felt this colossal source of energy, exploding, wildly roaring all around them. Xie Lian's 10 fingertips almost wanted to clench spasmodically. His legs also trembled, wanting to collapse, but he still struggled to hold himself up. In his heart, he wildly screamed for Huacheng to stop, to let go. Yet Huacheng's hands continued to firmly hold his head, not allowing him to separate, not accepting his refusal. An unknown amount of time passed. Then suddenly the back of Xie Lian's neck loosened. At the same moment, Huacheng finally released him. Xie Lian's legs turned to jelly. His knees buckled and he sank to the ground, his hands barely bracing against the earth to avoid falling backward. Junwu froze, looking in this direction, his expression grave. Meanwhile, Feng Xian, lying flat in the distance, cried out in disbelief. Your Highness, you? Xie Lian stretched out his 2T, trembling arms reaching to touch his own neck. There was nothing there. Hua Chong had transferred too much spiritual power to him. Truly a vast amount, completely exceeding the endurance limit of the cursed shackles. The 800 years of shackles that bound him today shattered. Mu Qing's mouth was still mumbling, how can this happen? How can there be so much? No one had ever heard of anyone using spiritual power to break the cursed shackles. Hoa Tan caught Ta Lin, who had fallen to his knees on the ground, and pulled him to his feet. Gidge, won't you try to fight again for a bit? No sooner had he finished speaking than Quan No suddenly brandished his sword and slashed straight down. Ta Lin, by reflex, raised his hand and parried it away. With a clash, Tru Tam was nearly knocked flying from his grasp. This single strike was completely incomparable to anything before. Ta Lin gazed at his own 2 hands, a hint of panic in his eyes. It had been hundreds of years since he had experienced this feeling. He had even almost forgotten that this was truly who he was. Powerful and ferocious to the extent that he could not control his own strength. Each time he took a step, the earth trembled and mountains shifted. 1 step, 1,000 li 1 step, ascending to the heavens. He clenched his fingers tightly, then abruptly delivered a punch straight into Quan No's face. From the start of the battle until now, Quan No's face had remained utterly pristine. Yet his punch proved impossible to block, finally causing fresh blood to seep from the corner of his mouth. He used his thumb to wipe it away, then cast his gaze upon the red streak of blood. In a blink, he swung his hand, discarding Tru Tam to one side. It seemed Quan No desired to engage Ta Lin in hand-to-hand combat, a battle without weapons. Ta Lin, seizing the advantage, surged forward, delivering yet another punch. It was immediately and neatly caught by Quan No, who, with a swift turn of his hand, twisted it down. Intense pain surged through him. Ta Lin's entire arm snapped, emitting a loud crack. But in a flash, he twisted his broken arm back into place with 2 cracks. It immediately recovered. He struck out with a palm, only to be blocked by Quan No once more. Seeing the situation was dire, Ta Lin aimed to seize Fuang Tam, which Quan No had just discarded. Of course, this action was well within Quan No's expectations. His swift movements instantly blocked Ta Lin's path. But he had forgotten that behind him still stood 2 figures, Mo Tin and Fong Tin. Although both of them had fallen into a state of being either crippled or utterly incapacitated, they still persistently, stealthily sought to snatch Fuang Tam for Ta Lin. Their movements were extremely subtle, yet Quan No seemed to possess eyes. On the back of his head, with a flick of his wrist, he unleashed a palm strike, striking down the section of the Thong Tien bridge beneath their very feet. Fong Ti En and Mo Tin plunged together, straight down into the river of lava. At that very moment of critical peril, a hand unexpectedly snatched Fong Tin's shoe. Fong Tin was also clutching onto Mo Tin's shoe. He strained to crane his head up to see, and in horror he cursed, bloody hell. What the fucking hell? National Master, honored elder, for heaven's sake, do not let go. The one who had snatched them both was precisely the National Master. Yet even before, veins were already bulging on his forehead as he roared. So you do remember him, an old man? Now hurry and climb up. The section of the bridge that Quan No had struck down was falling, yet Ta Lin raised his 2 hands high and strained, gathering his strength to make it halt, hovering in midair. He even wanted to use his spiritual power to continue lifting this bridge section, but Quan No would never allow him such unhindered action. The 3 of them were not even 2 or 3 zhang from the surging, lapping river of lava. Beside their ears they could clearly hear the sound of tiny air bubbles, gurgling and boiling. Mo Tin had fallen all the way down to the very bottom, repeatedly in a head-down, feet-up posture, an extremely terrifying sight. With just a little carelessness, his entire head would be bathed in the lava. Mo Tin's face was scorched, glowing red like charcoal, and he hastily shouted, "Pull me up quickly." Who would have thought those above had not even exerted strength enough to pull twice before he shouted back again, "Wait a moment. Don't pull me up anymore." The National Master, enraged, demanded, "What exactly do you want now?" Fong Tin said, "Really? Good, then I'll let go." Emotin cursed, "Fuck. You motherfucking bastard, if you're so brave, try letting go and see. Bend your face down and look. The sword." The others looked in the direction his hand pointed. Then they saw, right beneath them, a long sword, black as wondrous stone, stuck in the middle of the lava river, slowly sinking. It was precisely the Feng Xian sword they had sought to steal, which Junwu had struck down. Mu Qing strained with all his might, reaching out frantically to grab the sword hilt, only wishing he could transform himself into a long-armed ape, but despite his strenuous efforts, he still couldn't reach and cried out again a little lower, almost there. Blue veins bulged even larger on Guoxi's forehead, and he gritted his teeth. "You two are still very young and very reckless, while I am already an old bag of bones. Don't you dare go too far." After scolding them, he again tried to stretch out his arm fully, lowering Feng Xin's shoe. Mu Qing's face pressed even closer to the lava river, and at that very moment, the ends of his hair slipped from his shoulder, catching fire with an acrid smell. Feng Xian cried out in alarm, "Damn it! It's burning! Your hair is on fire!" Fortunately, Mu Qing had managed to pull the sword out. With one hand, he frantically patted at the flame on his head, while his other hand swung up, throwing the sword flying towards Xie Lian, splashing a few drops of lava along with it. "Xie Lian, catch it!" Xie Lian raised his hand and caught the hilt of the Feng Xian sword. And Guesher had also reached his limit. "My arm is about to fall off. Are you going to scram up quickly or not? Tell me." Feng Xian saw Guesher trembling uncontrollably, knew the situation was dire, and suddenly grabbed Mu Qing's leg and flung him up, shouting, "I told you, not only do you incessantly chatter, but you also dawdle." Mu Qing was flung up by him, and was on the verge of exploding with rage, when suddenly, from beneath the lava pool, dozens of lava resentful spirits leaped out. Those resentful spirits were like fierce fish leaping out of the water, lunging up to pounce on Feng Xin's chest. If not for his protective spiritual barrier, it was feared Feng Xian would have been burned and riddled with holes. Previously, these lava resentful spirits had been shot with warning arrows by Feng Xian, and harboring hatred in their hearts, they had covertly ambushed beneath the lava depths, following all the way here, intently waiting for an opportunity to drag him down. Calamity struck unexpectedly. Guesher was caught unprepared, and the weight under his hand also suddenly grew heavier. He was pulled tumbling forward a bit, almost completely falling down below. At this moment it was Mu Qing's turn from behind to grab tightly onto Guoxi's shoe. Feng Xian was still injured with 8 br. Anches still fully stuck in his chest, not yet pulled out. He had to fight hand-to-hand with the resentful spirits for a round, and he also feared that if his movements were too violent, Guesher above, unable to bear the load, might slip and drop him, which would be disastrous. Feng Xian thus became extremely constrained. More and more resentful spirits gathered within the lava depths, swarming and squirming, piling on each other to crawl onto him, scratching and tearing, as if they wanted to play tug-of-war with Guesher and Mu Qing above. Both sides struggled desperately, contending for him. If this continued, Feng Xian might be pulled apart into 2 halves. Feng Xian roared, "Can I just get a quick and painless end?" Mu Qing bellowed, "Shut your mouth." Suddenly he felt a feather-light sensation under his hand, as if the frantic resentful spirits had released Feng Xian. He then hastily pulled the 2 people hanging below up. After crawling up, Feng Xian still hadn't fully recovered his wits, panting heavily as he took a few breaths. The roaring cries of the flock of resentful spirits resounded from beneath the bridge. The others tilted their heads to look down below, Mu Qing and Guesher saying in unison, "Feng Xian, there's your son." Sure enough, inside the blazing red flock of lava resentful spirits, there was a white figure fidgeting, jumping up and down, frantically biting and tearing at them. Those lava resentful spirits were at least 2,000-year-old old ghosts. Wherever they went, they always gathered their cohorts, so why should they yield to a heroic spirit who hadn't even become a minor ghost yet? Immediately an onslaught of scratching, tearing and biting struck. The fetus spirit's body, originally pristine white, was instantly burned until it was a bloody mess, wailing shrilly like ghosts crying and wolves howling. However, no one could feel heartbroken by that mournful wail, they simply found it truly horrifying. However, Feng Xian erupted in a frenzy, his face purple with rage, He roared, "You have lost all sense of dignity, haven't you? A whole bunch of adults ganging up to bully a child. Come here quickly." The fetus spirit could not withstand so many resentful spirits and had begun to feel fear. Suddenly hearing that someone wanted to defend it, it then let out a strange shriek, leaping onto Feng Xin's shoulder. Feng Xian took down his long bow, pulled off the pile of branches on his chest, made them into a volley of arrows and swiftly shot them away. The fiery lava river splashed up in swirling waves. The fetus spirit, hiding on his shoulder, jumped and hopped, guffawing, as if gloating and praising the spectacle. On the other side, Xie Lian, seeing that they had escaped peril, finally felt at ease. He was just preparing to focus on confronting Jun Wu, when suddenly his chest went rigid. Jun Wu, at some unknown moment, had appeared behind him, one hand seizing his entire form. "Have I not told you already? Who do you imagine you learned your abilities from? Every single one of your techniques. I know them all as clearly as the back of my own hand." This binding hold, if Xie Lian did not break free at once, would surely crush him to death. Yet, every single escape technique he could possibly conceive, Jun Wu would undoubtedly have also anticipated. At this moment he heard Hua Cheng's voice ring out loudly, "Gage, there is no need to fear. You must still possess a technique he knows nothing of, a special move only you can employ, one he neither knows nor can ever use." Suddenly, a spark of inspiration ignited within Xie Lian's mind. Did he truly possess such a thing? Indeed he did. If evasion was truly impossible, then he would simply stop evading. Within Jun Wu's crushing embrace, he spun, seizing the other man directly before him, and gritted out each word. "This technique, you assuredly know nothing of." He clutched Jun Wu, using his own body to press him backward, finally shoving his entire form to crash against that incredibly solid cliff face. Into this impact he poured every ounce of his strength. Amidst the roaring collapse of the rock face, he vaguely perceived strange, fragmented cries. Those grotesque sounds emanated from Jun Wu's very being. His white armor had utterly shattered. Concurrently, Jun Wu released his grip on him and screamed with a wild frenzy, "Begone! All of you, begone from me!" Xie Lian raised his gaze, unable to suppress a shiver. What crashed into his vision was precisely the reason for Jun Wu's madness. The face. Those three human faces had resurfaced once more. Xie Lian raised Feng Xian, and with a single sweeping stroke, plunged it into Jun Wu's heart, impaling his entire form against the cliff face. Jun Wu's mouth filled, overflowing with fresh blood. This single sword strike from Xie Lian, gathering the maximum spiritual power he could possibly channel, exploded the instant it pierced Jun Wu. Even if his self-healing ability were infinitely stronger, it would be utterly beyond remedy. The mountain crumbled. Jun Wu, who had been pinned by the sword against the cliff face, plummeted with the crumbling rock mountain, collapsing prostrate onto the earth. Yet even then, he still would not relinquish, reaching back to grasp Feng Xin's hilt, as if intending to inscribe something upon the blade. It was evidently a curse, and he had to be interrupted. But just as Xie Lian raised his arm, the state preceptor hurriedly rushed over, calling out without pause, "Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince! Let it go, please, just abandon it." Talian stopped, unable to guess who exactly he was calling out to, or who he wanted to leave. Jun Wu again coughed out a mouthful of blood, angrily roaring, "Get out of my sight at once." The state preceptor knelt beside him, saying, "Your Highness, give up. Please just give up. Continuing to fight, what meaning does it have?" Jun Wu roared, "What the hell do you know?" Scram. The state preceptor said, "I could never understand. After so many years have passed like this, you have been a deity, you have been a ghost king, whoever deserved killing, you have killed them all. Whatever you wish to have is already in your hands. Why must you suffer so much? Ultimately, what else do you want? What do you want to prove?" Hearing this, Jun Wu's face briefly showed a momentary haziness. But the haziness did not last long. The fury within him exploded again, tightly gripping the state preceptor's throat, frantically saying, "You stop lecturing me. You have no right to lecture me. No one has the right to lecture me." Currently, Jun Wu no longer had enough strength. His grip on the state preceptor was very easy to break free from. Talian was about to make a move to save him, but the state preceptor again waved his hand, telling him to stay put, and continued to call out, "Your Highness, Junwoo coldly glared at him, still not letting go. Even though he was currently weakened, to break the state preceptor's neck was still as easy as turning over one's hand. This situation was extremely dangerous. The state preceptor, however, just let him grip him like that. I taught His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, fundamentally not because I wanted to cultivate a version of you who would not go astray, and then bring him to humiliate you. He is he, you are you two were originally two different people, your two paths were also different. Isn't that always common sense? What I said before, yo. You didn't believe, but what about now? Junwoo stared fixedly at him, not saying a word. The state preceptor lowered his voice, however. I truly miss His Royal Highness the Crown Prince very much. I very much miss the Wu-Yong nation that once was. I miss all of us, and also the days before we ascended. The state preceptor again said, for so many years, Your Highness the Crown Prince, I have only observed you alone. I feel tired, very tired. And what about yourself? Are you truly not tired? As the foremost martial god of the three realms, Junwoo's face and appearance had always been utterly perfect, untainted by mortal dust. Now that the halo around him had vanished, Xie Lian then discovered, not to mention those 3 human face disease masks, his complexion also had become excessively pale. His appearance was extremely cold and stern. Beneath his 2 eye sockets, there were still faint dark circles, revealing an indescribable gloomy look. How could he possibly retain the gentle, tolerant radiance that had once enveloped him as in former days? However, his current self was just like he was truly alive. Even if he was exhausted, the state preceptor said, Your Highness, you have lost. You must also allow yourself to be freed, mustn't you? Junwoo was slightly dazed. I've lost? The shockwave of spiritual power created too strong a tremor, blowing away even the ceiling of the rock cave, and gentle sunlight from above then streamed in abundantly. At the same time from the air, a curtain of fine misty rain came, lightly fluttering and scattering. Junwoo lay on the ground. Xie Lian stood observing from above, and seemed to read from his eyes, something as if a heavy burden had been shed. He pondered for a moment. Perhaps being defeated by someone, ending these days of frenzied self-division, was also precisely the deeply hidden wish within Junwoo's heart. After half a day, Junwoo suddenly asked, That move, what is it called? Xie Lian raised his sleeve, wiped the blood from his face, and said, Chest-crushing great stone. Junwoo froze, as if he had recalled something again. He smiled with a sigh, his eyes tightly shut, and exclaimed softly, Transcendent. Junwoo spoke no further. Everyone could see that his face could no longer conceal his utter exhaustion. The hilt of the Feng Xian sword in Xie Lian's hand finally lowered. Then he couldn't think of what to do next, so he unconsciously turned to look towards Hua Cheng. Hua Cheng remained standing there in the same old place, right on that remaining uncollapsed section of the Tongtian Bridge, quietly standing with his hands clasped as if he had been waiting for him for a very long time. Seeing him turn his head, he met his gaze and gently smiled. The national preceptor, sitting still beside the motionless Junwoo, said, Your Highness, you too may leave. Xie Lian did not understand his meaning and asked, Puzzled Master, aren't you leaving? The national preceptor shook his head. I want to look after His Royal Highness the Crown Prince properly. After all, I couldn't be by his side before. The sudden rain grew heavier and heavier, cascading down torrentially, and Junwoo's entire face was immersed in it. The rainwater, mixed with his fresh blood and life force, silently flowed away from the wound. As he turned back for one last look, Xie Lian had a feeling that the 3 faces on Junwoo's cheeks seemed to be gradually fading, little by little. He wondered if his eyes were deceiving him. After a moment of thoughtful silence, Xie Lian removed the straw hat from his back. With a swing of his arm he tossed it, and the hat flew to cover Junwoo's face. The cursed shackle on Mu Qing's hands had automatically loosened. He removed it, and after flinging it straight into the lava lake, he reverted to his previous cold and composed appearance. The fetus spirit on Feng Xin's shoulder jumped down again, crawling with its 4 limbs onto Junwoo's face, meticulously stroking his face, a stark contrast to how it had relentlessly kicked Feng Xian earlier, making him as its father so furious he nearly spat blood at the sight. Xie Lian paid no further heed. Clutching his bruised face, he ran directly towards Hua Cheng, as if reborn in fact. He had truly escaped peril and successfully survived. He was already wrapped around him from head to toe, crying out, San Lang! Hua Chang had just slightly extended his hand towards Xie Lian when Xie Lian immediately lunged into his EMB. Race. He couldn't keep his footing and stepped back one pace, his arms wrapping around Xie Lian, and with narrowed eyes he smiled and said, "Gidge, do you see? I told you you would definitely win, didn't I?" He then lifted Xie Lian's face, examined it carefully, and sighed, "You've gone and made yourself look like this again." Wherever his fingertips brushed, tiny silver butterflies appeared, fluttering and gliding past, and Xie Lian's wounds also faded with them. Xie Lian's eyes crinkled into a smile, saying, "It won't be like this next time." Hua Chang furrowed his brow, feigned coldness and snapped softly, "Don't even dream of a next time." After a slight pause, Xie Lian reined in his smile and said earnestly, "San Lang, earlier in Mount Tonglu, I once said that after we got out, there were some words I wanted you to hear. Do you still remember?" Hua Chang smiled and replied, "Of course I remember clearly. Every word Gidge speaks I remember." Xie Lian bowed his head. A moment later, with great difficulty he finally gathered enough courage, and said frankly, "The revelations of Jun Wu just now also related to this matter. Truly, I should have told you sooner. But I have always been unable to make up my mind, afraid you would know." Hua Chang said, "Afraid I would know? Your Highness almost became the white-clothed calamity, right?" Xie Lian was surprised. "You?" Hua Chang did not answer immediately, but in front of him knelt down on one knee, raised his head to look at him, and smilingly said, "How is it, Gidge, doing this? Have you remembered yet?" How could he not remember? That year that ghost Wu Ming also frequently knelt down on one knee in front of him like that. In a blink of an eye, that pale smiling mask and Hua Chang's gently smiling face merged into one. Xie Lian's heart trembled, his legs softened, he directly plopped down in front of him, mumbling incessantly, "San Lang. Is it you?" Hua Chang smiled, maintaining the posture of kneeling on one knee on the ground. His only remaining eye intently gazed at him, saying, "Your Highness, I have only ever watched over you." Xie Lian still could only repeat one word, "You." He finally understood the meaning of many words from before, things that seemed as if Hua Chang had only casually told him. So that's how it is. He had never thought of it, so Wu Ming was indeed Hua Chang. He knew everything. He saw everything. He had always been there. Suddenly, a myriad of emotions, all kinds of words surged up together in his mind. There was also gratitude, also shame, also heartache, also immense joy, etched ever deeper, also incurable adoration. Xie Lian's very soul truly wanted to burst. He couldn't utter a single word to express his feelings. He could only suddenly pounce forward and cried, "San Lang." He seemed as if he only knew these two words. He called out once more, "San Lang." Hua Chang was pounced upon by him, fell to sit on the ground, embraced him and laughed heartily together. The initial fear and worry were swept clean away. Xie Lian intently wrapped his arms around his neck, smiling on the verge of tears. But before his tears could fall, he suddenly perceived a very unsettling phenomenon. Although Hua Chang was a ghost, his body seemed not much different from that of an ordinary person. Yet, Hua Chang in his embrace, that beautiful crimson-robed body, was slowly becoming transparent. Thank you for tuning into Eastern Romance Tales. Please like, share, and follow to support my work. It truly motivates me to bring you more stories.